Utah Jazz is very proud to select Darrell Griffin.
With the third pick, the Utah Jazz select Darren Williams.
We have selected from the NCAA Championship North Carolina State team, Thurl Bailey.
The Utah Jazz select John Stockton of Gonzaga University.
The Utah Jazz are very happy to announce that we're going to bring a mailman.
Brooklyn, stand up. That's right. The NBA Draft 2023 taking place at Barclays Center and, of course, remotely here at the Delta Center. As you take a look at the newly renamed Delta Center. All things old are new once again. Fans finding their way inside the building. First 10,000 in, getting free J-Dogs. That's a good reason to be here early for tonight's event. And, of course, you can get fed, and you're going to have a great time. Jazz Nation all excited about this much-anticipated 2023 NBA Draft for the Utah Jazz. For the first time since 2004, we'll have 3 first-round picks that they'll be able to use. And right here on the porch, Alema Harrington, Big T, Thurl Bailey, the coach, Tim LaComb, and we got plenty in store for you. JP Chunga will be joining us. Jazz Brass are in the house. Ochai Agbaji is standing by. He will join us in a moment. For me, first time back in the Delta Center since it was renamed, and a lot of excitement, Big T, for this moment.
A ton of excitement.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going back in my mind right now to my draft day. It was nothing like this, obviously, but within its own confinement, it was exciting. It's exciting to know that your life is about to change, and these young men we're going to see tonight, we're going to see them decked out, first of all.
Absolutely.
But it's a great night for them.
Coach?
And for me, this is basketball Christmas. You know, last night I didn't sleep at all. I was so excited and the preparation going into it. But now we get to see how everything falls out. But exciting time right now in Jazz world. We'll talk about all the options they're going to have, but it's awesome to be here tonight with you guys.
58 guys will get their names called here tonight. Each one of them, of course, will have a special memory. They'll tell their grandkids about the moment they were drafted. We had a chance for 3 guys that have had recent memories, so they've been drafted just, the last couple of years, and what a moment that was. We're going to relive it. We got a chance to give them an iPad, take a look at that draft night and relive it. Take a look.
Ochai Agbaji from the University of Kansas. The Memphis Grizzlies select Walker Kessler from Auburn University.
You know, I thought I was going to be a little more emotional, but I was good. Like, I thought I was going to shed some more tears, but I think my mom did a good job of keeping it. But when I walked up, apparently she said she just started, waterworks started coming and everything.
The Cleveland Cavaliers select Colin Sexton from the University of Alabama.
Wow. Time flies. Year 6 on the way.
That time leading up before this was like so nerve-wracking.
Right.
Like obviously the 13 picks before me, it was just like just waiting and all the time was taking forever. But like once you hear that, it's just like it's really nice. It's a really nice feeling.
I had my whole family there. Houston, my brother, Lily, my sister, mom and dad. Yeah, it was very special. Very thankful that they could all make it.
This was a moment right here that just I don't know, can't even describe it. It was just a loss of words for sure. It was one of those moments that I look back and during it, so busy, being busy of like everything going on and moving so fast that you don't realize like you sometimes gotta take yourself back. I feel like a week later I took myself back of like, wow, I'm really in the NBA. Just this moment right here alone was amazing.
Now putting on the hat, you know, going up there, taking pictures. It was a dream since a kid. So to be up there was, you know, I was very thankful for it.
And under that jacket, I was sweating so bad. I was sweating so bad under the jacket. So like, you know, you have to like close it, like you stand up, close it and all that. So I was glad I closed it.
And joined now by Ochai Agbaji. And Ochai, thanks for spending some time. You got a chance to be down on the floor and talk to this group and the fans that are here. How exciting was that for you?
I mean, so exciting. I mean, just the energy in this building is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, for this amount of fans to show up just for a draft watch party is insane. So you just see the love and the support from the city and the fans. So yeah.
You were talking in that piece about sweating underneath that suit. You looked fantastic. Maybe give us a comparison between what that night was like and what tonight is like.
Oh, way more relaxing. I mean, I'm obviously not sweating or not doing any of that, but no, that night I was just talking to my agent before I came here, and he was like, "How nervous were you before that?" And I was like, I mean, I was nervous, but at the same time, I was chill. I was chill knowing that, you know, I was gonna have a place in the NBA, but at the same time, there's nerves going around all in that green room, so it's fun though at the same time.
Coach, I want to go back kind of before the draft stuff because, of course, I was drafted in 1983, and there's nothing like it is now. But how did you know, and what did you know, I guess would be the best way to put it, because my college coach and my agent kind of told me where I might fall. Is it still the same right now?
It's still the same.
Work before?
Yeah, it's still the same. I mean, I had a range from probably, say, 10 to 18. So those were the teams that I went to go work out for, and that kind of, you know, helped me get my range and maybe who would take me, who wouldn't. So that kind of helped in a lot of ways.
Speaking of the season that just passed and your journey, everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
How important was that little spell in the G League, kind of get your confidence, find your stroke, and then you came out and just tore it up?
Very, very important. I mean, I think back to that as that's being a key piece to my development and my growth as a player in this league. So I'm always going to think back to those times, and even if it was a short period, I mean, I got so much out of it that I'm going to keep for the rest of my career. So just learning lessons along the way, and just learning lessons through my rookie season.
Was there a key moment or a key game when you knew, like, okay, I belong here?
It was probably after, my career high, or my second career high after my first one, where I scored 19 points at the Bulls, and I didn't miss a shot. So it was kind of that after that game where I was like, you know, if I get going and I get out there and just play confident, then I can just play my game. So
I think you go back to your college experience, and you know, there are going to be some guys that are going to be on the board tonight that have won a national championship. How important is that kind of thing as far as that college experience versus it doesn't matter what happened, once you jump into the NBA, it's a whole different world?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the college experience is way different than the NBA experience. I mean, the second you get into the league, you just start learning once again, like you just started all the way over. So it was nice, but going into the league, that's what's key, is really keying in on that.
What was you played for a legendary college coach, Coach Self. Maybe one thing you take with you from him always that you learned that'll always be a part of you?
Just the intangibles. The intangibles that it takes to win, and what it takes to win at a high level, and night in, night out. Little things that you do, little details that you key in on to give yourself and put yourself in the best position to win. So just that's what I've taken from him, and he's been a great coach.
Coach, we appreciate the time. Not as busy a night as it was last time around, but we hope to see you at nights like this and continuing to entertain Jazz fans. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.
And you're not a rookie anymore.
No, not anymore.
And more career highs.
Yes, more career highs.
We like that as well.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
All right, big night. So much goes into a night like this because the Jazz, of course, doing their due diligence, and Bart Taylor is in charge of scouting for the Utah Jazz. JP Chunga had a chance to sit down and talk with him about what goes into making sure that they're getting the right guy.
So, a lot of differences from last year to this year with 3 picks in the first round. How has that helped you get people into the building?
We've been able to get a lot of guys in. It's been great. We've been able to evaluate a ton of the players in this draft. We feel confident that we've been able to get everybody in that we've wanted to around 9, 16, 28. And so we feel very well prepared by being able to get everybody in the building.
Generally speaking, what is the talent level in this draft as compared to other drafts that you've been a part of?
The talent level is very high. Obviously, it's very high at the top. That's been talked about a lot, but we feel like there's a lot of talent from the middle of the first round, the end of the first round, even in the second round. We feel like there are players throughout this whole draft that are going to impact rosters, impact winning, and help teams develop and help teams succeed in the NBA.
How early are you identifying these players? Because you're racking up travel miles, you're going overseas, you're crossing the country. When do you identify these players as somebody who might be in the 2023 NBA draft?
So really it starts when they're in high school even. So we have a grassroots staff that is working to identify the players at some of the high school events that we're allowed to go to, and then we're tracking them from there all the way through their college, international, whatever that may be. So it's really so for some of these guys, 3-4 year process. If they stay in college longer, it can turn to 5, 6, 7 years. But we're really tracking them for multiple years from when they kind of get on the scene and then as they get to college and their pro careers.
And you were telling me the other day on the podcast how much tape of these players that you're watching to get good at this job, to be a scout. It really is, and it comes down to watching tape.
Yeah, we watch a lot of tape, a lot of bad tape, a lot of bad basketball, but you have to watch a lot of film and you have to really dig in and understand who the players are. Going back to the high school thing, like seeing who they were in high school, who they've developed into, what things they've improved upon, what things maybe they've added to their game. And so knowing all those little things about them throughout their careers is helpful when we make these selections.
And that clearly has to impact what you see come workout day when they're in your building, because you already have a file on them and you know who they are as players.
Yes, yeah, so when we bring them in, we try to tell them, hey, just be who you are. Don't try to show us anything that you're not good at, because that's only going to hurt you. But when they come in, we try to really dig in on maybe some of their weaknesses. Maybe we tailor the workout to maybe really look at those and see how bad the weaknesses maybe are compared to trying to just let them show us all their strengths, which I'm sure they want to do. And so that tries to help us, give us a little bit of insight into who they are and where we maybe can help them get better.
First draft with Danny Ainge in the fold. How's he been like to work with?
Danny's been excellent. He's been a lot of fun. We like to joke he never has a bad day, and he's been great. He's been really helpful in our process of helping us form kind of what we're looking to do, who we want to look at, who we want to really target at each pick. He's been very helpful, and he's very good at this, so we're trying to all just learn from him, and we trust him to make good selections.
Same for Will Hardy, who's in his first year after being in charge of this team. How is he adjusted to the draft work, which I know he's not watching these players like you are, but he still has a voice in the room?
Yeah, so we definitely want to have his opinion. We want him to be involved. We want him to feel good about who we're picking as well, because he's the one who's going to have to work with them and get them better. So I think if he doesn't really buy in on the player, you're starting in a negative spot anyway, so we don't want that. And so we've sent him video, we've sent him film of, hey, these are probably the guys that we're really looking at and that you should get to know. And then we ask him, like, who do you like? Who do you think? And then we bring him in, he sits with them, he talks to them, he gets a good feel for them. At the end of the day, Will has told us multiple times, hey, I trust you guys. I know you've done the work all year. I'm just coming in on a snapshot. But even with that snapshot, you can gain, he has a great feel for who will work and not work in his system. And so even with that, we want to put a little bit of weight into that to make sure he's good with who we're selecting.
Excited for Thursday?
Very excited. It should be great. I think we're gonna have a lot of good young talent coming through our building.
There you go, Bart Taylor with JP Chunga. We'll get with JP here in just a moment. I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Jazz YouTube channel. And a little bit different for us because it's live, it's interactive. We encourage you to jump on the chat, and we'll try to get to some of those questions. I'm sure they got some tough questions for our two experts over here. But we're here to just have a good time. The #1 pick overall has been selected. Victor Wembanyama has gone to the San Antonio Spurs. No shock there. The only thing that stands out to me, I remember when Giannis Antetokounmpo came into the league and picked at number 15, and he was a shadow of what he is today, and it took us a while to understand how to pronounce his name correctly. Everybody knows how to pronounce Victor Wembanyama's name already because this guy is a phenom.
Well, we're going to get to know him so well, we're going to call him Wimpy. Right? But listen, this kid's the real deal, Coach. I mean, we haven't seen someone with those kind of numbers as far as height and wingspan to be able to do all that he can do in today's game. It kind of reminds me if a Rouse Sampson were playing in this day and age and had those skills, it would be like that. I mean, guard skills, able to handle the ball, has those big strides. I even think on the defensive end, he is going to be a league leader in block shots, maybe even more than Rudy Gobert. But look at that deep three, Coach. Come on, you ever seen anything like that from a 7'5" guy?
From a young Thurl Bailey.
Well, stop it.
But I think you hit on a bunch of great things. I think it's his poise and patience as he plays, but then his ability to do the great stuff that at an 8-foot wingspan, we've just never seen it before. I particularly like his grace and his demeanor. I don't think this moment's been too big for him. He seems to be made of the right stuff, and I think, like Thurl said, I think he's got a chance to be like Defensive Player of the Year type guy, or in that contention, every year he's in the league because he's just a force.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about his maturity. He's just a young kid, and a lot of these guys coming in, he's got pro experience, that makes a difference, but I think that the maturity is an important part of his entire package outside of the measurables that you take a look at. Again, we're live on YouTube. You can jump in the chat. We encourage you to do that. And we've got JP Chunga. He's monitoring the chats for us. And joins us now live from ZBBC Zions Bank Basketball Campus with big interviews. Of course, you just saw him with Bart Taylor. But what's the energy like, JP, over there at ZBBC right now?
Yeah, I'm looking at the war room right now. It's over to my left, and it is palpable. Everybody is in there. Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Will Hardy, the entire crew in Jazz Brain Trust, who has been scouting this entire year, is down there in the war room trying to see what they can get here in the draft as they have 9, 16, and 28. But of course, you can drop your questions in the YouTube. I'm monitoring them right here on the iPad. And Spencer asked, hey, what's the next few days look like for these draftees that will come onto this team? And I know the job father, Tim LaComb, on the desk knows exactly what that's like, because it's going to be onboarding. You're going to go to IT. You're going to figure out, where am I going to be working? Over the next few days, they're going to be coming down here to Salt Lake City to this beautiful practice facility, and they're going to be figuring out who they're going to be working with, jumping into group texts, figuring out their teammates as they get this thing going. But to Tim, what are the next few days for these draftees?
Tim, so the question for you is, what are the next few days for the guys that get selected? And then if it's up to 3 that get chosen by the Utah Jazz, what will the next 3 days? Obviously, they're going to come in, they're going to tour the facility, they'll have their official press conference. What else goes on?
Man, I would say, a great whirlwind. I think they pick up and go. I think they try to get to the locale as soon as possible. I was actually out here last year after the Jazz were able to acquire a couple of players after the trades. There's some informal things done during the summer, but, your life changes really fast because you're now in a league that you better be getting better every day.
Yeah. See, you talk about your years with the Utah Jazz as a player and the Salt Palace as your venue. Now, the Delta Center is where you play basketball. But we'll talk about the Zions Bank Basketball Campus is one of those facilities that I've watched develop and grow as you have and you have. And to see what Brian Smith and the new ownership has done to make it a place where guys can come and really get to work and have everything that they need right there.
Listen, these guys are so fortunate. Now, their paychecks aren't bad either, but they're commodities, and you got to take care of your assets, right?
Yeah.
And so it is amazing. I'm not even comparing. I mean, they took care of us back in the day.
Yeah.
But to this degree, you're right. These players have everything they need, from nourishment, the right nourishment and food, to a great practice facility. They each have assigned coaches right? With them, like the guards may work with one coach, the bigs may work with them, but they've got coaches that work with them to help develop them throughout the season. I remember when I got drafted, I mean, our coaching staff was our head coach, 2 assistants, right? We had a trainer. And, you know, that's really all we needed back then, and it's grown so much. But listen, I got here and got acclimated with the city, met everybody. I had to sign my contract. I did that at what was then called the ZCMI Center at a press conference. So they'll get these guys here right away and get them acclimated to their new surroundings.
Yeah. Speaking of the day that you were drafted and what that was like, we're jumping the time machine.
Come on, man.
I love the fit here. The small bow tie, the chain on the outside, and of course, you got some NC State colors to go along with it.
Hey, listen, people talk about outfits and stuff. I wore whatever my mom could find. I don't care if she went to the thrift store, she found something that was long enough for me. I might even have started the trend. They call them high waters back then, guys. But it was so exciting to be able to walk that stage, and that was Ralph Sampson right there. Those were the top 6 draft pick. I was the 7th. Russell Cross right there was number 6.
Great graphics, by the way.
Yeah.
They just wrote it down with a marker and throw it up there.
And look at the technology right here. I mean, it was just. It was a good time, Coach. I mean, it's changed, but it's still a great time.
Like, I seen the Salt Palace like that. And this is like nostalgia, because I was here. I was a young kid. I was 9 years old. I was 9 years old when the Jazz bus pulled into town. And I got some too, but some gray in the beard. But no, these nostalgia, and what is kind of neat right now is I feel like we're on the front end of that again. We've renamed the Delta Center. You know, it's got that back. We've actually got some space in roster. We're going to talk about all that. The picks that the Jazz have, and then what we were able to find last year in Lowry Markin and Walker Kessler and the like.
It's not my gold team, right?
Yes,
no, it wasn't real. I found that thing on the way to the draft.
That's my favorite thing. You said you found it.
That's a beautiful thing. You know, we're talking about the future for the Utah Jazz, and I like what you said because I think this feels like the beginning once again. And the Jazz have been acquiring assets over the years since Danny Ainge has come here. But before that, with Justin Zanuck, we always refer to him as Jay-Z. He is kind of one of the architects of what the Utah Jazz do. We'll take a look at what the future holds for Utah. Tonight's big because you got 3 first-round picks tonight. First time since 2004 that you have that many picks in the first round. But for the Utah Jazz, they've been compiling picks through trades and different other ways to make sure you have those assets available to you, and they become very valuable. And for the next few years, several years, in fact, the Jazz will have plenty of opportunities to continue to either use those as assets like currency, or they will use it for an opportunity to pick somebody in the draft. So Justin Zanuck's been involved in a lot of drafts over the years, but this is the first one for him where he's got 3 first-round picks to try to be able to use. And JP Chunga sat down with Justin Zanuck to talk to him about what tonight's going to be like.
Heading into the draft, what do you see and identify as some team needs right now for the Jazz?
For us collectively, we just need to continue to add to our talent base. Really excited for the draft tonight, being able to add some individuals that I think can contribute to our culture here and get a chance to develop them, get them better, and guys that'll come in here and also contribute to the community and be proud Jazzmen.
Well, we're looking forward to checking them out because you have multiple picks this year. It's very different from last season. How do you even approach this type of scenario when you have them in different areas of the draft?
Sure. I really can't say enough about how proud I am of our staff here. We've, as I've said publicly before, we've been working on this draft for basically the last 2 years. And so when you have this many picks, you get to know all parts of the draft. We've had, over 100 people come in here and work out so that we get to know them and interview them, and just the man hours that takes. Bart Taylor's done an unbelievable job organizing all of us, and Steven Schwartz and Chuck Terrell and Luca and Katie Benson, who's doing all the logistics that went off without a hitch. It just really, their contributions among other people too, that allow us to make some really good decisions tonight.
What opportunities do multiple picks open up for you guys?
So that combined with anticipated cap room and the future picks, we are very popular on the phone. People trying to get in, different teams trying to get in different parts of the draft, talking about things right after the draft, in anticipation of July 1, moving up, moving down, moving out. So all of those things we've been able to have a great pulse on the rest of the market, which we know well. More than likely, just like I've told you at the trade deadline, there's 150 conversations, and maybe there's one or two that are legit that don't happen and so the most likely scenario is that we'll make our picks, which we're excited about, and go from there.
Danny Ainge, his first opportunity to have a draft with you guys. What's been the collaboration?
We've had a blast. I mean, Danny, his personality, his energy, it's just, he never has a bad day. And so he's coming in here to help us and help organize us and give us his experience. And obviously he's been watching games right alongside with us and been on the road. And it's just been really fun learning about his experiences and then him getting to know us and our experiences here. It's just been great.
And then the new coach, Will Hardy, somebody we brought up the entire year. He never has a bad day, seemingly. How has he let his voice be heard in this process?
So we've always talked about partnership, and the same ways that we support Will when he's coaching our team on the court during the regular season, he's doing that for Danny, myself, and our group. When his opinion, he does his work, and he's happy to give his opinion, but he also has ultimate trust in us, and we have great belief in him because all of these guys that we're going to take are young,
right?
And they're not fully developed. And Will and his staff have already proven to be very good teachers. You've seen developmental success, and to see them to do that and know that you have that type of environment here that we bring young men into, it's exciting for us because we think that the guys that we pick, we can get them better here.
Let's let him get back on the phone. It's Utah Jazz General Manager Justin Zanuck.
JP, thank you very much, and we'll get back to CBBC. More interviews on the way, but joined now by Michael Potter, Jazz man, and thanks for taking some time. And I don't know what it's like for you right now, being down here in this environment. For us, we've been around a long time. Being named the Delta Center once again is a big deal for us. What's today been like? And give us your full experience, your first year as a Jazz man.
Yeah, well, today to start off, I don't know however many NBA teams can have events like this and have this many fans show up. So to have the support for us that we do right now, all these fans showing up just for a draft party, it's so much fun to watch. As far as my first year, it was a lot of fun. Love the state of Utah, love the organization, the team, teammates, coaches. Everything's been great.
So as you absorb all of this and what's going on, what stands out to you the most? Is it getting down to the nitty-gritty of players beyond what, number 3 maybe, to see where they go, but what excites you most about this part?
For the players themselves that are getting drafted, it's where they're going to go. All the work that they put in going forward is it's all paying off tonight. As far as me right now, it's encouragement to work hard, because they got new guys coming in every single year, right? So it's for me to work hard, make sure that I'm doing what I need to do to stay on the floor and be with the Jazz and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it's a super exciting time. Summers are always great, so it's a lot of fun.
Unique, obviously found your way here to Salt Lake. Tell us what you think of the city itself and kind of what your experience has been just culturally living here.
Yeah. So I've been with a couple of different teams. This is by far the best fan base, and I mean that. I really mean that. The fans here, they show up to events like this. They show up to every single game, regardless of what time it is, what day it is, they show up. As far as an organization, it's top-notch. Ryan does a great job of, start from the top down. Ryan does a great job. Jay-Z, Coach Hardy, all the rest of the staff. Everyone's fantastic. In the city itself, we love it. I'm from the Midwest. We don't have any mountains in the Midwest, so having mountains surrounding you the entire time you're here is just gorgeous. My wife and I just went down to Zion National Park a couple weekends ago, and Bryce Canyon as well, and just the variety you have in the state of Utah. You can go skiing and get desert in the same day. It's crazy beautiful, and I love living here.
I got a great hike in Provo for you, so we'll connect.
For sure.
You know, think about watching some of your highlights here, and as you look at the things that have developed for you during the course of a year here with the Utah Jazz, when you came into the league versus what the reality was as far as what you thought, this is the thing that I need to work on, and whether it was coaches coming to you and saying, hey, we're going to develop this part of your game, what was it like for you as far as expectations versus reality?
For sure. The biggest thing for me was I knew coming in, being an undrafted guy, I was going to have to fill a role, right? Obviously, you can build up past that, but even some drafted guys, you're coming in to fill a role. So I knew that I, have to humble yourself a little bit and realize, like, okay, I have to do this one thing really, really well to help my team win, and then fill in other intangible areas like diving on the floor, talking on defense, talking from the bench, all that kind of stuff. So that was the biggest thing for me, understanding that. But then when you get here, realizing how fast everything is. You have the best athletes in the world, best shooters in the world, best skill players in the world coming at you every single night, and you got to be prepared for it. And so watching film, knowing the scouting report, all of those kinds of things, it's a very big mental game as well as a physical game.
We appreciate you taking a little time to spend with us, and looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in the upcoming season. So thank you very much. We appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll take a live look. BBC, excuse me. This is the War Room. They allowed us to put a camera in there, which is fantastic. And you got a chance to see Justin Zanuck. We heard from him already. There's, of course, Ryan Smith. There's Will Hardy. And there's Danny Ainge.
I'm trying to read lips.
And for Danny Ainge, came with the Utah Jazz 2022 and took over as the CEO of Jazz basketball, which is an important role. And for him, you got a chance to sit down with JP Chunga, and talk about his expectations through his experience about what's going to happen here tonight.
No fun last year, but this year you've got plenty of action to look forward to in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really exciting last month in preparation and trying to get organized for today.
How do you approach a draft where you have multiple picks in different areas of the draft?
Yeah, so, I mean, most of the draft is the preparation that leads up to it. I mean, the unpredictability makes it fun and exciting, but we've explored many different options, from trading up, trading back, trading out, trading for players, moving around, and there's a lot of contingencies that we have going into this draft that aren't so much on us. I think we know what we want to do, but we're not sure what other teams are willing to do on the clock, and so that makes it fun and exciting.
And everybody needs a deadline.
Everybody needs a deadline, yeah. Otherwise, this goes on forever. It's like the trade deadline. We like deadlines.
Generally speaking, what has impressed you so far with this year's draft class?
There's a lot of equality in the draft. There's different positions, different body types, athleticism, experience levels, but I think that it's a fun group, a really good group of kids that I think are going to be able to help any team that they land on. There's not so many great, franchise-changing players so much as just a lot of good players.
What do you value most when you bring them in the building and they come to the practice facility?
I'm not sure what you mean by what do I value most?
What do you pick up from having them in the building, bringing them and actually seeing them, as opposed to just watching them on tape?
Yeah, you get to know a little bit about their personalities and how they interact, and I think seeing them up close and personal, you can check mechanics, running mechanics, shooting mechanics. Sometimes you can pick up on some things visually that maybe you don't see in the games, and sometimes you see players some of these guys are so young, they've made improvements from the time the season has ended till the end of the season, but seeing them in person is always an advantage.
What about the collaboration between Will Hardy, Justin Zanuck, the entire group with your first draft with multiple picks?
Yeah, so it's been fun, like getting to know the scouting staff first and foremost. Like, we've been together all year. We've been in a lot of meetings and evaluating these players throughout the course of the season. And so that's fun in its own right, but it's also good getting to know all the people that are involved in making these decisions.
And there are a lot of people.
A lot of people, yes.
CEO of Jazz Basketball, Danny Ainge.
JP, thank you once again for that interview. And again, Danny Ainge joins the team in 2022 as CEO of Jazz Basketball, but this is really his first draft. I'm curious, Coach, as you're looking at, I remember when we made that decision or the announcement that it's like, wow, this is a guy that's got all kinds of history. I'm a BYU guy, so the history goes back to that. But obviously, as both a player, a coach, and then as a general manager, when you heard about that decision, what came to mind for you?
I was really excited. I felt like, Danny Ainge has proven himself not only as a great evaluator of talent, but a great deal maker. One of the great deals of all time, the Celtics, getting those three marquee players together, to be able to go out there and play and win a championship. But I think everywhere Danny goes, his teams are cohesive, they're team-centric, and they play really hard together. So, I was thrilled about it, and then I think just the inherent relationship that already existed between the Smiths and Ainge, that can never hurt.
Well, Danny Ainge wasn't easy to like as a player.
No.
But that's what made him so good on those Celtics teams. Tough, hard-nosed guy. I really love Danny because he's been in almost every possible position in the front office, as a coach, as a GM, right? I mean, even as a broadcaster, he knows the game, he knows his players, and just the knowledge that he brings. And he's a straight shooter. You don't get any fluff with Danny. Danny will tell you just like it is, and you have to like that kind of honesty in this day and age, not just to the players, but to the general public. And I just love the fact that he's here. It's just such a priceless commodity when you talk about guys who've been there and done that. I'm excited to see the future of the Jazz get to where he's been before.
On YouTube, you can jump in the chat. We encourage you to do that. JP Chunga is monitoring the chat. We'll get to some of those questions. You're seeing the updated draft board right now, and the selections that have been made. One of the Thompson twins has been selected. Amen just got selected by the Rockets. And so anything stand out to you as you're looking at maybe your draft board, your mock draft? Coach, does anything surprise you at this point?
Well, you love the Thompson twins back in the day. You had the album,
man, hold me now. Would you please hold me, please? I'm not too surprised. I feel like Charlotte did a good job of smokescreen, but it just did never make any sense. I don't think Scoot and LaMelo there. No trade, so that was interesting. Amen Thompson's been kind of rumored to the Rockets. It's been pretty open. The next one is interesting. I think what I'm reading, at least, the other Thompson brother may go here, but this is where now, all these picks are affecting who's going to be available for the Jazz.
It's really amazing with all the information that we've collected. You sort through it all, and you start to see some trends. As I tried to put some of these things in different stacks, there's a lot of 6'7" to 6'9" guys who can play. And that's kind of the way the league's trending, because these guys can guard multiple positions. They can see over people. You talk about Amen Thompson. He's a guy with good handles. He's a good passer. He can shoot over and see over smaller guys. So, and a lot of 6'5", 6'4" to 6'6" guards out there. So you talk about a team like Denver building big teams. Maybe that's the trend. But, there's a lot of talent out there, guys.
Yeah. And I feel like the other thing is you're never going to find, like Wembanyama is the closest thing to a complete product. But now you're looking for an elite competitor, elite shooter, an elite defender. Now you're just trying to find as much of that as you can. And that's what everybody puts their board together and now reacts to how these picks go.
Yeah, because when you're talking about picking in the lottery, right, you're looking at, there's going to be players that develop, and that's Micah Potter, who was just with us moments ago, and what can he develop into as a role player or beyond that. But you're also looking at best player available when it's your turn to pick. Danny Ainge made mention of the fun part of it is you know who you want, but you don't know what everybody else is going to do. So there's a game there.
But what does that even mean anymore? Best player available. Right? We're really into analytics, which are big, and it really helps to see what a guy was good at or could be really good at or better at. But, talent-wise, it really is about knowing what you can develop, what you need. Maybe not right now, because Coach, I'm not sure that any of these guys, maybe even Wembanyama, are strictly and directly NBA ready. I think it always takes these guys some time. Some guys it doesn't take as long, but they got to get in and get acclimated. So, you know, best available, what does that mean?
And really, beauty is always in the eye of the beholder.
That's right.
Each team has their need, right? And each team has their list of things that are important to them. So that's what makes it fascinating, is the variables are off the charts, and you can kind of, you know who's involved, but now where do they fall? And the draft's kind of gone as though I thought it might to this point.
Yeah, Massar Thompson, the other Thompson twin, just selected by the Detroit Pistons.
Now, baby.
So you were right. You nailed that one. You nailed that one, Coach. Here's the look. We talked about the acquisition of assets, right? And that's been happening over the last several years. And this is the collection of draft picks that the Utah Jazz have. Now, when it says you have their own 1 through 10 protected, if it's in the top 10, the Utah Jazz will keep that pick. Otherwise, it will go to whoever it was promised to. The 9 through 16 through 28, all of those are for this year, obviously. And then you got swaps involved too, where depending on who in that row has the best selection or best pick, then you get that pick. So there's a lot of stuff, moving parts that are part of this as well. But I still look at all of the picks that the Jazz have acquired between the Jazz and OKC is another team that has been able to do that. But those are very valuable when it comes to if you're going to pick somebody in the draft or if you're going to use them, same way that Utah Jazz were able to get in return for a player. You know, you get first-round draft picks, whether it was for Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert.
Really, every marketplace has a commodity, and picks in the NBA are a commodity. And that's what's so crazy. A year ago, we sat here through the entire draft. I actually did it on radio at a restaurant. But we sat there with hopes that maybe the Jazz would move in. Ultimately, did end up getting a couple of picks out of it. But now, as you can see, the cupboard is chock full of picks, and the commodity is there to do what they need to do.
Listen, there are going to be some amazing stories.
Yeah.
And I don't even just mean from the guys who are in the first round. Right? I mean, you look at the story of Nikola Jokic, right, and what he became, and there's some other great stories and journeys out there, but you best believe some of these guys who are going to be maybe disappointed are going to turn that into, look, I'm going to prove to people that I belong in this league, and you know, as Craig Bolerjack says, hey, if you're good, they're going to find you.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm excited for that part of it, to see the journey of some of these guys that may not go in the top 30.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been a couple of busy weeks, let's say even months for the Utah Jazz. All the things, including the Delta Center, the new Jazz broadcast deal, all being things that have been announced over the last several months for the Utah Jazz since the end of the season. And of course, Jim Olsen, Jazz president, has been in the middle of all of that. He sat down with JP Chunga to talk about everything that's been going on with your Utah Jazz.
Exciting night at the facility today. Where are you on draft night? Tell me about your experience for these nights.
Well, draft night's always really exciting. I mean, it's a big night for the organization, but you know, in reality, it's really 365 days of work coming to an end on one day here. And so, I mean, Danny and Justin and their team, I mean, they've worked the entire year to prepare for tonight. And I'll be here, but really this is their night, and a night when their hard work will pay off.
So you don't put your draft analyst hat on?
No, I don't. No, I leave that to the experts. Those guys live and breathe that part of the business, and I focus on other things, and I let them do that.
One of the things that you focused on was the broadcast deal, a real game changer for the organization. How are you viewing it, and what has been the response from Jazz fans in the early going?
Yeah, we are really excited about our new broadcast deal because, quite frankly, it's really more than a broadcast deal. I mean, we are standing up a media company. We realize we're in the content business, and we have incredible content. When you think about our players, our games, the coaches, the excitement that our fans have around, the Utah Jazz. Our goal is to produce the best content out there and make sure we can get it to our fans. And a big part of that will be, broadcasting our games on KJazz TV, covering 100% of Utah. Everyone can watch Jazz games this year, and that is a very big part of it and very important. But it's really a bigger play when it comes to, SCG media and the impact that we can have, delivering content year round.
And streams just like this.
Yeah, and streaming. I mean, everyone knows that, you got to be in the streaming business, and we're still working on a few details, but we are going to have a great streaming solution and just one more option where our fans are going to be able to get, once again, not just the games, but other content.
Tell us about the draft party that's happening at the arena right now.
Yeah, we're really excited about the draft party. I mean, when you have 3 first-round draft picks, there's a lot of excitement in the community and amongst our fans, and they want to be a part of it. They want to feel, the excitement of tonight, and so opening up the doors and hot dogs and Cokes and turn it into a party and have a lot of fun. And it's been a minute since our fans have been able to be in the arena and participate in something Jazz related, and so tonight's going to be a big party at the arena.
President of the Utah Jazz, Jim Olsen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
JP, thank you very much. And the Utah Jazz, yes, just announced earlier this week the new broadcast deal and building that portfolio for Ryan Smith, the Smith Entertainment Group Media. Now, SCG Media will be the ones that will be producing the games for the Utah Jazz. They'll be available on KJazz Channel 14. That means that's available over the air, meaning easy access to be able to watch your Utah Jazz. And we're kind of going back in time, Big T. When you started in the broadcast business with the Utah Jazz, the games were on KJazz.
I did, and it's interesting because I know both of you still have those rabbit ear TVs,
right.
and you can pull them back out now, and your family can get the games. But you just mentioned it. It's kind of the old is the new. You said that at the beginning of the broadcast, and it really is almost full circle in a lot of ways. The Delta Center coming back around, everybody having the opportunity to watch the games now and also extend that reach. So we're going to get, Jazz Nation's going to grow as well. So it's exciting for us, one as broadcasters, but also for Jazz Nation who, get to tune in every single night.
The biggest question I get from the younger set, let's say, right, is like, what's the streaming situation though? And that's a big deal. And you just heard Jim Olsen talking about it. In this business, you gotta be streaming. And the Utah Jazz, with the Utah Jazz app, are making it now possible for people to be able to get what's going on with the Utah Jazz on a stream, as opposed to it's depending on your carrier. That's a big deal. For you, part of the younger set, Coach.
Well, and one thing I want to say is, you remember when you used to be the pivotal part of a game, you had the rabbit ears.
Yeah.
And you had to have somebody stand in a certain spot of the room.
Or
move the plan, or the foil was the go-to. I mean, yeah, but it is awesome. Probably one thing I hear more than ever as I travel around and people know that we do some work with the Jazz, we want to see them more. We want to have access, and Ryan Smith heard that, and access we have.
Yes, we do. As we were, as a company, right, talking about what the future was going to hold for us, and I think I can talk about this. Jim Olsen met with us as a broadcast group, and we were talking about the future. This was a year ago, almost to the day, and we were talking about the NBA was looking at somebody like Ryan Smith, actually specifically Ryan Smith, to be able to take the old model with the regional sports networks, which was broken, and come up with what the future was going to look like, and we're living that.
And you know what? You watch. Other teams are going to try to follow suit. It really is groundbreaking in a sense, and really awesome that the Utah Jazz, Ryan Smith, have been able to do it, kind of set that precedent. Now we'll see with everything going on with TV right now, that people are aware of and streaming. It's just it's good to be a part of that train, if you will, and you're going to see other teams try to follow.
He's a disruptor, man.
Yeah, I love
and this is a big move. But I'm with you. I think other people are going to try to jump on board.
Well, we're watching this draft board, and now we're at number 7. Here's a live look at what's going on in the war room as you get closer. We're just one pick away from the Jazz turn to make their selection with the number 9 pick. One of 3 picks the Jazz will have, 9-16, along with 28. And I think previous 9th picks, if you're going by, okay, what have the Jazz done in the past? And remember that Trey Burke was acquired on a draft night trade. It was selected by Minnesota, then drafted to the Utah Jazz. Gordon Hayward was developed into an all-star, and he's a guy that if you're looking at, okay, what can you get at that 9th pick? I think that's what you're hoping for.
Well, you are. And there's, again, we're talking about how much talent is out there, but sometimes it really is, Coach, about you going to the right place, right? You're going to the right place that you may be able to fit in and make an impact in right away. Gordon Hayward, it took him a little while, but he was an impact player. And so when you look at where the Jazz are, I was the 7th pick when I came into the Utah Jazz, and it took me a year to really get acclimated. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see who the Jazz pick at number 9 because there's a lot of talent out there, as we keep saying.
That must have been my problem, Alema, is I must have never found the right team. Because I never had any success, as a player. So I had to actually go on the other side and start drawing up plays.
But there's a lot to be said for going to the right place where they develop you. And some would argue Darren Williams had his best years with the Utah Jazz. Gordon Hayward, aside from the injuries, best years with the Utah Jazz. There's a lot of players that came to this system. I think they had their best seasons as a professional basketball player in this situation. And I don't know that it's always the case with the team that drafted you because they had the idea, like, this is what we're going to develop him to be. Right. But it does work out sometimes.
Well, the reality is it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, right.
Right? It just does not. And that's what happens in this business and I'm not sure it's anybody's fault. It just sometimes isn't a good fit, or that player doesn't pan out the way the team thought they would. But there's so many great stories of guys who get that opportunity, get to the right place. This organization historically has been really good at developing players, right? And so that's the exciting part for me.
Yeah, and the developmental piece is huge. We talked about that with Ochai, but having the G League right here in town, have the ability to practice, and it's a great situation. So I've been, in the 3 or 4 years I've been covering the Jazz, been really impressed with the way that development piece is instituted. As you said, every guy's got somebody looking out for him.
As we get closer and closer to the Jazz selection at number 9, let's get to JP Chunga over at ZBBC, just outside the war room with some breaking news. JP, what do you got? Okay, we're working on the audio with JP. I'm not even sure what that breaking news was. So we'll get back to him as quickly as we can reconnect the audio there. But for the Utah Jazz, this is now that moment where, okay, we're one pick away from our turn to select. And they'll be looking at what happens one pick ahead because, the Washington Wizards have some interest, I think, in some players that the Jazz have some interest in as well.
Well, I don't know if you guys, you probably seen it. You're a football guy. Draft day, right? I always wondered if it's really like that. They're on the phone at the last second. They're saying, well, I want this, I want that. But it's exciting. It's exciting to see what these guys are talking about, where it all comes to.
All right, we've reconnected with JP. Our audio should be good. JP, you got some breaking news for us.
Yes, according to media reports, this is going to be affecting the Jazz and what they have at 9 and the players available because 7 and 8 are flipping. Bilal Coulibaly going to the Pacers. He's actually going to be heading to the Washington Wizards, and the Wizards picking Jarris Walker will be heading to Indiana. That according to media reports right now.
Thank you very much. And these picks right now, the number 8 pick is in. You just heard JP talking about them flipping those picks. And we were just mentioning how important it is, okay, position, development, and sometimes, and Trey Burke was in that situation. Donovan Mitchell was a guy that was a draft day deal. Rudy Gobert with the Denver Nuggets as well.
Yeah.
There's going to be moments like that in a night like this.
Well, you wish you could be a fly on the wall, because I would love to hear some of the conversations that go on and how they come to some of these conclusions. I think it's all very interesting. I'm just not smart enough to keep up with it, Coach. You've been there.
No, I mean, the analytics piece of this, too, there's so many guys there, the money balls.
Yeah.
You know, sitting there with computers saying, hey, if we were to do this, but yeah, I'm with you. I wait and see how it all drops out, and then I start to analyze, you know?
Jazz are officially on the clock as you're taking a live look right now inside the War Room at Zions Bank Basketball Campus, where the Utah Jazz will make their selection moments from now. A lot of anticipation. We talked about this. It hasn't been since 2004 that the Jazz had this many opportunities to be able to select. Now, they've had some higher picks than this, you know, picking number 3 or number 5, or going back to, you know, a number 2 pick. But for Utah to be able to have that number 9, it's kind of it's a nice place to be. Obviously, you would have loved to have been able to be in the lottery and get lucky and get to number 1 and get Wembanyama, but there are good players available right now.
Well, they're great players. And I think what we have to do as folks who are knowledgeable about basketball, we've seen the Jazz play. We know what they did last year. So we've got to be able to say, well, what do you think they need? And then guess in our own minds. I know people are out there saying, well, they need a point guard, they need this and that, but they've got a nice core to work with. I'm excited to see who they pick.
I just got word from CBBC that they were clapping in the War Room for the Utah Jazz, meaning that it would be an indication that they got the guy that they wanted and who was available at number 9.
Well, I mean, if you're just looking at mocks, right, the one guy who's fallen a little bit is Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
Villanova, who's a junkyard dog. Maybe some questions about his some injuries, but he's dropped a little bit, and at 9 would be, in my mind, pretty good value.
Yeah. And for the Utah Jazz, we'll have the official announcement coming up here in just moments. We'll be able to talk about who that player is and your guys' thoughts on exactly what that player can bring to the Utah Jazz. But the expectation with a number 9 pick, top 10 pick, is that you're looking at a guy that should be able to come in and be impactful immediately.
For sure. I believe that's what the Jazz are looking for. With the core of players they have right now, Larry Martin, we saw Ochai Agbaji up here a little while ago, Walker Kessler, you've got a hard-working core of guys who, when you talk about positionless basketball, we saw the Jazz point guard by committee last year, right? We know the guys, starting with Mike Conley, who played, we saw Colin Sexton step in there.
Nikhil played. Mike and Nikhil obviously not with the Utah Jazz anymore. You hear the crowd here. They're excited. The anticipation is building here at the Delta Center for the selection by the Utah Jazz. And there's a live look inside the War Room. There's Will Hardy to your right, on the right side of the screen, and then, of course, Danny Ainge. Justin Zanuck was on the phone. I'm assuming that he's talking to somebody, right?
I wonder if JP could sneak in there somehow and mic that thing. It'll be interesting.
We got to say thank you to the front office for the Utah Jazz. It's rare that you get that kind of access that we're getting here tonight. And the audio is off, but to get the video inside what is going on, and you look at everybody that is there, that has been part of this. Jim Olsen made mention of this. 365 days that they're working towards this, and tonight is that big night.
Go ahead, Coach.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, this is, I'm just saying what's going on. There's a pause. The Jazz pick is in, but they're pausing, showing a little Victor Wembanyama. Hasn't he gotten enough credit? He's already done through his interview circuit. No, but it is. It's a game-changing thing for these guys. Exciting time.
All right, we are right about that time. It looks like the official broadcast went to a commercial break. This is like
Hey, Jokic was picked during a commercial.
Yeah, that's true. But he was way down. And you make an interesting point because whether you're picked at 9 or picked in the 40s, you have your opportunity and you'll use that for motivation for a lot of the players on what they're going to do. You see fans here at the Delta Center standing up.
That's amazing. It's amazing to see the fans and the interest this year with the Jazz picks.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a game's going on out there, which it kind of is. But it's good to see Jazz Nation out here represent.
I'm trying to get a sneak peek.
Coach is trying to get.
I'm trying to get
What you trying to do, Coach?
What's
Trying to
going
cheat?
on?
What's
I'm
up?
trying to cheat.
Yeah, I didn't know. I used to open my presents early too, or shake them, shake them.
I'll tell you this about this Jazz fan base, Jazz Nation. I don't know that we were necessarily surprised. We understood that this was going to be an interesting season for Utah because you traded away your 2 All-Stars and Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. But the fans came out and supported this team 100%. They probably wouldn't have done that as much as they did if the team didn't entertain and show them that they were going to play hard.
That's right.
But that's exactly what they did, led by Will Hardy as their head coach. And Jazz Nation has not missed a beat. But they're looking for reasons to celebrate, to get excited. And this moment right now is one of those.
Well, let's be real and truthful. I don't think even Jazz Nation kind of knew what the season was going to come to. Everybody was a little nervous, right? And then the season started to go on, and they started to get to know each individual player on that team, and they saw how these players matured. Larry Markkinen found out he was a star, and then they built it around him. So we got a very astute fan base out there. They really appreciate the fact, even on nights that the Jazz lose, that this Jazz organization, this team goes out and plays 100%.
And that's what I felt like. There was a real resolute emphasis by the organization, regardless of how the team was constructed. They were going to play really hard. And I had a blast watching this year's team. Obviously they moved some parts around as the season went on, but the competition, the way that they beat teams that they shouldn't, they represented the organization in such a really good way and set just a great expectation for what's to come.
And it felt like we were talking about a different guy almost like every night.
Right.
And a collection of guys. You look at the stat sheet, and there's 6, 7, sometimes 8 guys in double figures, which means that's the way Will Hardy wanted to coach. These guys they're terrific. I'm excited, guys.
Here we go.
All right, the broadcast officially is back from break. That means that the Jazz pick is in, and we will find out who the Jazz have selected with the number 9 pick in the 2023 NBA draft. And the commissioner is at the podium, as you can see from the view in the war room. Taylor Hendricks out of UCF is now officially a member of the Utah Jazz. And we're going to talk Vince in a minute later on in our show here tonight. But I really like the all-pink outfit that he showed up in tonight for the draft.
I can pull that off.
Here's a look at some of the measurables for Taylor Hendricks. And if you're looking at a guy that's got a great wingspan, is 7'1", good height, 6'8", very athletic, and just 19 years old. Coach, your thoughts on what Taylor Hendricks can be for the Utah Jazz in the first year?
Well, the first thing I want to show you is I star a handful of guys.
Yeah.
And there's a star by his name because I thought his fit was ideal. He, coming out of high school, was the 84th ranked pick, but he went in, he became an elite shooter for his position. You talk about Walker and Lowry, the length, but another guy who can stretch that floor out and create major driving lanes. He shot 40% from 3. He's very versatile. If anything, a little bit of offensive creativity that will come. But man, the one thing this guy does at an elite level is shoot the basketball.
I think the question everybody's asking, how does the head coach of the Utah Jazz feel about it? Will Hardy, I'm sure you saw him in the war room. Now, the selections are made by other guys, right? The coach is there to coach, the GM, the CEO of basketball, those guys, they're spending all the time going and investigating, doing their due diligence and making sure that they get the right player, not just when it's talking about measurables, but the intangibles as well. So when they bring somebody in, Danny Ainge, you made mention of this, being able to see what a guy's personality is like. Those things are important, I think, to a lot of different franchises, but over the years have been extremely important to the Utah Jazz, and I think that you have to consider those things when the Jazz are making selections.
Oh, no question about it. And I have to be honest here. I talked to Coach a few days ago, and the name that he brought up to me, he only talked about one guy. He says, I like this kid, and it was Taylor Hendricks.
Yeah.
And so, Coach, I need to get a little bit of that smarts that you have. But listen, we talked about size in this league.
Yeah.
And it's not just about size, it's what you can do with it and how you can develop it. This kid comes with a lot of great intangibles. He's got a lean body. Maybe he can play some small ball 5 as well, but you better believe that on both sides of the ball, he can be really effective.
What he's really great at, too, is timing. He's a shot blocker from the weak side. So you think about Walker protecting the rim as he protects it, Lowry his length. I remember when the Bulls started, nearly started 5 7-footers, and the Jazz are kind of on that track. Taylor Hendricks, I mentioned his shooting, but that was the other thing that stood out was how consistently he ran the floor, which is something I look for, and I'm sure you do in your big guys. How hard do they run the floor? And then his attention to detail on the defensive end, his ability to block shots.
So is this guy a power forward, or is that, do we not even talk about that anymore, and you're just either a forward, and maybe centers are obsolete?
Yes.
Obviously you got... Go ahead, elaborate.
Yes, I mean, it could be all of the above. It depends on what you want out of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this league now, and that's where we are. It's positionless basketball. Obviously, he's going to be a huge factor with his length on the defensive end, and switches and drop coverage, things like that. But the development of him and what he can be as the Jazz move forward is just, his ceiling so high.
And you do talk about it, this process being almost like a puzzle, and the Jazz doing a great job taking a piece that I think fits perfectly. They needed somebody to shoot the basketball. Length never hurts in this league. And then you get a kid who, again, I want to stress this, he was 84th in his class, right, in the top 100. So he thought 83 kids were better than him, and what he went out and did is just proved everybody wrong and ended up being the 9th player pick. So I think there's some resolve in there, too, that you can really tap into.
I like players like that have that type of resolve. Some would say a chip on your shoulder, because it's part of that motivation. We had a player here that was constantly trying to find new ways to motivate himself in Karl Malone.
Yeah.
The mailman was always looking for another reason. It all started on draft night, and he thought Dallas was going to pick him. He ends up dropping to the Utah Jazz. But for Taylor Hendricks, even at number 9, if you go back to his high school ranking, motivated by that, he's thinking right now, hey, there were 8 guys selected in front of me.
The other thing that he really possesses for a big guy, and I think you guys, obviously watching his tape, this really stood out, but his lateral quickness. He can guard a 1. He can switch onto a 1 and guard a 1. And we know Walker's got that ability too. So again, you're looking for a variation in guys you can put out there to create more matchup problems, but to have a guy literally out there now, 1 through 5, switch it, move your feet, guard your yard, he can certainly do that.
And he's 19 years old, right? I mean, we talk about the youth in this league, and he only spent 1 year in college, right, at UCF. So the impact that he's going to have, I mean, you talked about the G League, you talk about ways like Ochai Agbaji spent some time there, and look what happened to him. His development came quickly. He got an opportunity. So I'm excited to see where the Jazz see him and his development. coming and how fast that needs to come for this team to really progress.
I think Ochai is a great example of a guy that came in, and we recognized this when we had an opportunity last year at the beginning of the season, before the season started, to sit down with each player. We had about 5-10 minutes with each player and with the coaching staff, with Will Hardy, to be introduced to him and get a feel for what his style was going to be. But to a player, when you talk about Ochai, the way that he came in and he wasn't hung up on what he was in college. Right. He came in, I got to go down to the G League, and some guys would have hung their heads and said, oh man, I'm not playing in the G League. Right, I'm coming off a title. It's like, I need more than that. But he was willing to put in the work, and those are the kinds of players that you're looking for.
But you know what, too, I think, I know the Jazz knew that. One of the most important things about all this, I believe, on top of the game itself, is the interview. Yeah. You know, those people who've ever interviewed for a job, they know that when they go and sit down, that boss can learn a lot from them at that sit down, regardless of what they've done on the basketball court, right? They kind of know where their head's at. They kind of know whether they're into themselves. They know if they're just worried about their social media hits, right? Or if they're going to be a team player, if they're willing to be patient and develop and follow the instructions of the things they're going to get at this level. So Ochai was exactly that way, and you know that the Jazz do a thorough job when they sit these guys down at the table.
Yeah, it's that's a part I didn't really understand until I was a coach, and the number of calls I got from executives on fringe guys like you know, that may or may not even be picked, but they did their due diligence and tried to figure out that character piece. And like you said, I think that face-to-face, that interview, has got to be a huge piece, because again, you know what you're after, you know what kind of guys fit in your system, and that's the great advantage you have on those visits.
I think about the world as far as quote-unquote amateur athletics is concerned today, and the options that you have. And you got guys that are going to go and play in the G League instead of go to college, right? Or they're going to do something. You can stay in college and start to make money with NIL deals. And so I think it becomes that much more important to understand the personality of a player and how they're going to handle it. And you might get a little bit of a read on that earlier when they're still in college, because this kid might have $1 million NIL deal already.
Right. And you know, and listen, there's nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with coming in with a confident attitude that you're going to make a mark in this league. I think it helps you. But some of these kids, all of these kids really, from a certain point, you talk about the AAU, they have been told that they are the best thing since wheat bread, right? So now some of that's a rude awakening at this level. Right now, you might have to take a step back and find out that, hey, you're not quite ready, but you got to put the work in to get to where you want to go in this league.
One story that stands out from my coaching time, and it was toward the end when I knew it was time to get out. I had a mom talk to us about usage rate and her concern that their son was going to have enough usage rate. We weren't talking about winning championships. We weren't talking about how can I help the team. We were talking about usage rate. You know, that's when I started to kind of look for other things.
Let's take a look at, of course, the Utah Jazz with their selection, Taylor Hendricks, the number 9 pick. How does that impact the Jazz's now an updated constitution? This is what the Utah Jazz look like, with Hendricks as one of their forwards, along with Fontecchio, Gay, Juzang, Markkanen, Olenek, Samanic, and now Hendricks.
Well, first of all, the Jazz have some really good pieces coming back. They've built around Lauri Markkanen. They built around Walker Kessler, Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk, those guys. So I think they're ahead of schedule. I really do, based on the expectations. Now you add a kid like Hendricks in as a forward, depending on the quickness of his development, on what he's already coming in with. He'll get an opportunity to add to that size. You talked about the Jazz starting 3 7-footers. I mean, it's very effective in a lot of games. So that's the way this league's trending. You look at again, what Denver is able to build as a championship team. And I think the Jazz they're on their way.
Look at the size. I mean, you look at Markin and Olynyk. You forget about Luka. You know, picked him up toward the end of last year, and I liked him. You know, big physical guy who will go and beat people up. Right. And then Olynyk, you know, he's so skilled. And then you add Hendricks, another skilled. So again, you've got options, and I love that. As a coach, you love options.
Yeah, when the Utah Jazz are making these selections, how much, Coach, do you know about? Well, actually, hold that thought. Let's get out to JP Chunga live from the ZBBC Zions Bank Basketball Campus with more on the Jazz selection number 9 with Taylor Hendricks.
Yes, people in the chat are asking how's his defense. And the thing about Taylor Hendricks that I really enjoyed watching his film and preparing for this draft is the fact that he's a multi-positional defender. He doesn't give up. The chase down blocks are amazing to watch because he has that second effort, that third effort, that fourth effort. It's not just an initial action that eliminates him on an offense. As you can see from the images earlier, the Jazz brass was very excited. You could hear the clapping from here in the room that I'm at in the practice facility. But Taylor Hendricks, the big question that they're asking in the YouTube comments, and of course you can add more comments and questions to us here on the desk. They're asking, can he defend? Can Taylor Hendricks defend? Up to you guys.
JP, thank you very much. I'll toss that out to our experts here. Coach, you did a lot of research on Taylor Hendricks. Your thoughts on his ability to defend on this level. And we talk about this all the time. You watch a guy in college and you think, okay, that guy defends well in college. Can it translate to the next level?
Thurl, what's the most important element of being a good defender in your mind?
The most important element in my mind, depends on the position, but I think the lateral movement.
Your lateral movement. And for a big guy, with the league as ball screen centric as it is, you got to be able to cover ball screens in a myriad of ways. Again, I mentioned switching. That's the greatest way to do it if you can. You know, just switch two guys. And the unequivocal answer is yes. I think he's an elite shooter, but I think his defense is above average. I think his ability and mobility is above average, and I think the one thing that I measure is heart. JP mentioned his chase down blocks, his weak side blocks, but I think his upside defensively is off the charts.
Well, I'm going to go out the limb here and say I believe that probably was at the top of the list.
I think so too.
When these guys are talking about drafting kids, right? I mean, you can really develop guys who may not be great scorers, but they're good. You can get them to great. Defensively, if they come in with some of those intangibles, if they've started in a place, they started in college or wherever they're coming from, in a place where they've been taught some of those things, then you can build off of that, especially with the mindset of kids today. He's got length. That's something you can't teach. He can shoot the basketball, like Coach said. But I think the Jazz, one of the priorities when they're drafting these kids is the ability to play on both sides.
There's a look at the official Utah Jazz Twitter account, and that gives you the handle for Taylor Hendricks. I'm sure that he's getting bombarded right now from Utah Jazz fans hitting him up on Twitter, and then he's got a whole bunch of new friends on Twitter right now. And when you were asking that question, Coach, what's the most important thing? You said lateral movement. The thought that came to my mind was desire. And as you guys talked about, you heard JP talking about the chase down blocks, not giving up on plays. Those are things sometimes you see elite players, and we talk about this all the time, regardless of sport. When you want to watch a player, you don't always want to watch the highlight reel. You want to watch the entire game. Is he taking plays off? You know, and is he gonna chase a guy down after he's gotten beat? And Taylor Hendricks has that kind of personality.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty proven. I did watch full games. You know, I watched 3 full games. Then I watched his highlight package, and that was, you know, he as I said, the other piece is he runs the floor. You know, we watched Rudy Gobert run the floor hard, and when he ran the floor hard, good things happen. You get a big guy to run the floor, And what that does is it just spaces the floor horizontally because everybody's got to stay home, protect the paint, and you've got shooters. So you add another guy, again, very versatile, very long. Freak factor was mentioned in our meeting the other day, in our production meeting, that want guys that have an uncanny piece to them. So at 7'1", wingspan, 6'8", and can switch 1 through 5, I would say that's a pretty good freak factor.
Well, very few teams now are like the old Golden State Warriors, where they just killed you with their offense. To win in this league, you got to play defense. Yeah. Right. There's scorers. You got guys who can score. You can do a lot of things by committee, but you've got to have an identity if you want to win. You want to get to the playoffs and further. Your identity has to be a toughness on defense, because you're not going to shoot well every night. But if you're not shooting well and you're not allowing the other team to shoot well, then you got a shot. Right. You're in the game, and so. As up and down as offenses go sometimes, as players have tough shooting nights, that defense is the constant that keeps you in it.
Absolutely. You talked about draft night being like Christmas for you, right? Sure. And I think for a lot of people, for different reasons, it has that kind of feel for it. And I always look forward to seeing what guys are wearing at the NFL draft, at the NBA draft, because it kind of sets the trends for what's going on, what fashion's going to look like. And everybody, we've seen them that have been decked out. And we wanted to jump in the time machine, go back in time, and look at some of the historical outfits. Now we call them just fits over the years. And talk to guys about what they were wearing, including Ochai, Walker Kessler, and Colin Sexton. Here's a look.
I thought I looked good. I am, a taller guy, so clothes are always going to look a little interesting on me. I thought it was good. I had a little Rolex on, rented it. It was not mine, sadly. And then, had some nice dress shoes. No, I liked it.
I like this fit. I definitely like this fit. I like the shoes. These are definitely red bottoms, so you know what I mean? Can't go wrong. But I definitely rate this fit a 10 for sure. It was clean. It was for the time, and I'll put it back on if I could. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that you don't look back 10 years from now like, oh my goodness, like we're looking back 6 years from this moment and like, okay, this is a clean fit. And I made sure that it was crimson colors. You know what I mean? High school, both high schools I went to, Hillgrove as well as Pebblebrook, it was crimson. Then I went to Alabama, it was crimson. So I had to rock it as well. So I had to keep it going. And then I got drafted by Cleveland, which was also like Clemson, as they would say, wine. So
I wanted to go something simple but a little flashy. I wanted just initially just like black with gold accents in it, kind of just like gold stitchings in it a little bit, but I found this fabric, who the people that designed it, they designed it for me obviously, but they found this fabric that was kind of like black and it kind of had gold under, kind of like hidden a little bit so you could only see it at certain angles. So it's really nice, and I still look at it today, actually.
Coach, I'm pretty sure why they just call them fits nowadays, because what I was wearing back in the day would be out. But, fashion is such a big part of what these guys do now. We might have the fashion king in Jordan Clarkson here, but it's a big deal to these guys what they wear.
Yeah, it is. It's a red carpet of sorts, and I saw Grady Dick's outfit. He hadn't been picked yet, but wait till you see this thing. It's got jewels on it and stuff, man. But right there, nice bow tie, nice
Looks
clean.
Like Lyles and Silver called each other wearing the same thing. Rodney Hood.
I mean, Rodney Hood could work on Wall Street in that thing. That's a very conservative, nice look.
The NBA tried to impose a dress code on the players. Like, they had to wear suits and stuff. That didn't work out because we're in a day and age now where it's such a variety. Yeah. It's so important to these guys to be themselves and to wear what they like to wear. But that never gets old right there.
No, I can't imagine just standing up there. Trey's looking good with the gold, popping gold. I always love like a solid, you do this often, solid suit with that Nice mix
Yep.
in the shirt.
I've done this too with the dark shirt where the tie pops.
That's got some Ron Boone in it right there.
Yeah, it does. It does. Gordon Hayward, I heard that he had to go over to Nordstrom's to get that suit.
That doesn't look like it even got ironed. I mean, look, that was quick. That was a quick turn. The tailor shop couldn't even do much with it.
Oh, Brewer. Looks like he's got a little zoot suit on. His is a little long. See how the tail of his suit comes down? It's two button. No button at the bottom, so it kind of opens up. D. Will.
D. Will looks good.
Looks like an executive.
Executive, yeah. Maybe a little big in the shoulders, but...
That's when they had the pads in the shoulders.
Yeah, it's true.
And the mailman.
And I believe this tie should be somewhere in a Hall of Fame because it was...
He hated suits.
It was thin, and it was thin to win.
Yeah, he hated suits though. I don't even know if Carl owned a couple of suits. Now, look, right here, you see the little bow tie that was in, the little chain I had on.
You found.
And yeah. And you know, I was strutting it a little bit.
I like is that a name tag?
That's a name tag.
Like, that's
yeah.
how cool.
That's a name tag. That's how we did it back in the day.
Put Thurl on there.
That's right. I wrote it myself. We're going to go to Alema with a fan right now talking about Taylor Hendricks.
Guys, thank you very much. I'm here with Jake. Jake is a longtime Jazz fan. And Jake, where are you from?
I'm from Orem.
From Orem. So he's down on the other side of the point of the mountain. How long have you been a Jazz fan?
Since first grade.
Your thoughts on Taylor Hendricks? I think everybody has an opinion. What are your thoughts on this pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a lot of length, great defender, really, really high floor. I mean, I'm happy with it. Let's go get a title.
You talk like you're a scout with the high floor and all of the lingo. When you look at what the Jazz maybe need in the 16 and 28 and the other picks that the Jazz will have, what are you thinking as far as needs for Utah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'd love to strengthen the back court, see what we can get there. Maybe trade up. Just kind of depends on how things fall, and yeah, just excited for whatever we get.
How many draft parties have you been to?
This is my first.
Really?
Yeah, I'd love to keep coming though.
Yeah. And did you make a decision like, hey, you know what, the Jazz have 3 first-round picks, let's go tonight?
Yeah, I actually saw it on Twitter. I saw Ryan Smith announced it, free J-Dogs. I'm like, let's relive the glory days, go get some free hot dogs.
Free J-Dogs, that'll get everybody out, plus 3 first-round picks. I'll send it back over to you guys.
Coach, I think we were 10,001 and 2. We didn't get our J-Dogs.
Well, I think Alema took 2. I came up and I saw 2 in his bag, so we'll have to make him buy us a couple.
Yeah, we watch see the draft board right there. Little basketball DNA at number 11, 21-year vet, DeJuan Howard's son, Jet Howard, going number 11. Derek Lively, the big fella, going 12.
And Jet Howard, really kind of a fun, explosive offensive player. He'll be fun to watch. I think he's got ability to kind of light it up. And then Lively, really long, had minimal success, I guess, at Duke, but you got to love his frame, his ability to move. So interesting pick there at 12.
What's your thought on, we talked about a lot of those 6'7" to 6'9" guys who are small forwards, power forwards or whatever, but not a ton of centers, right? What do you think that's about? Or is it just about the needs of most teams not needing guys in that position because they already have them?
No, I think the game's changed so much, and it happened really fast. But big guys used to go down and establish their spot next to the paint, and now everybody likes to play in a 5-out. Everybody likes to move it and be able to use a 3-point shot to their advantage. So you want big guys, but you want big guys to be more than just bangers, big bangers that get rebounds.
And there's probably not a lot of Jokic's out there where you could run everything through them. But we're going to go back to Alema. I think he's found another fan.
Fans all over the place. That's all I'm doing. I'm tracking down fans. And is it Tyler?
Yeah.
Tyler, longtime Jazz fan?
Yeah, man.
Okay, and tell me what inspired you to come to the draft party here tonight.
Hey, man, longtime Utah Jazz fan, and honestly, I came out for the free J-Dogs, so hey,
That's the second one in a row. Free J-Dogs. Look, J-Dogs is passing us by right here. Tell us about what your thoughts are on Taylor Hendricks, what the Utah Jazz got with the number 9 pick. Is this what you expected? Do you want something different? What do you think he can do for Utah?
Yeah, I didn't honestly expect it. There was talk that, I thought we were maybe going to trade up, to maybe number 6. But, hey, it just didn't happen. So
yeah, this was a kind of a season where people were wondering, okay, what are the Jazz going to be like this year? Were you, with the Jazz from the very beginning all the way through?
Yeah, man. Very hard season early on, but I think this is the most fun I've had watching the Jazz probably since the beginning of the Donovan Mitchell era.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about why the Jazz were so much fun to watch, and part of it was that you knew you were going to get 100% effort on the floor. Would you agree with that?
110%, man.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the time. We'll get back to the desk and Big T.
Coach, let's talk about Taylor Hendricks just a little bit more and maybe what you think about his impact right away with the Jazz. I mean, Coach Hardy is well known at giving guys opportunities. He's obviously going to need some development, but nothing like development on the fly, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just from a sheer standpoint of size, right? His 7'1" wingspan is what jumps off the page. And then when you also understand that then he has the ability defensively to guard a small guy, or take on a big guy. He does a great job. His instinct to block shots from the weak side is so good. And I think there's obviously a spot for him because we talked about Lowry and his versatility. Walker, we've only seen a skiff of his offensive game, don't you believe?
Yeah, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but is there anybody that you can think of that his game might kind of lean towards? He's kind of been around in the league.
Hendricks, probably a guy like maybe a little better shooting Robert Covington.
Ooh,
you know what I mean?
like that. Okay, I like that comparison. You're back.
Brady.
Hey, you found two guys that like hot dogs.
They like hot dogs, absolutely. But they like Taylor Hendricks. I think that people are, in general, happy with the pick. I was in the building when Gordon Hayward was selected with the 9th pick. And I remember the boos that came from the crowd. And they thought, like, who's this guy? And obviously, he had made a name for himself in the NCAA tournament. And that goes a long way. But I don't know that people thought that he was going to be able to develop into eventually an all-star, which is what he did here with the Utah Jazz. We're talking about the draft. Grady Dick is now off the board. Maybe the best shooter that is part of this class or one of.
Yeah, I think Grady Dick has a lot of intangibles. I think he's going to be kind of one of those one-job guys where his most important job is to come in and shoot the basketball. Not just shoot, but make them.
Yeah.
Right? He's proven that he can do it. I think that'll translate to this level.
That reminds me, Coach Rose, who I know is watching tonight, he used to say that all the time and say, Coach, I found a guy that can really shoot it. And he would say, yeah, but can he make any? Yeah. So that is an important part.
We don't need
that
three-point shooters.
We need
three-point makers.
Yeah. And this guy does that.
Yeah. Well, the Utah Jazz now turn their attention to some degree off of that number 9 pick, and we're a couple of picks away now from getting to the 16th. And Ryan Smith officially weighing in, welcoming Taylor Hendricks to the family. This is going to be a lot of fun. I would agree with that. If you look at what Ryan Smith has done over the couple of years now that they've been in full ownership of the Utah Jazz, it's been a fun ride. And I think if you're a player and you're looking at the different places you could go, there was a time when Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, like everybody wanted, we're going to get TVs in our lockers and all the different things that were part of being a member of the Mavericks. I think you look at an owner that is out on the forefront and, as you mentioned, a disruptor, right? A guy that is going to come and do some things different, regardless of how it's been done in the past. I think if you're a player and you're looking at opportunities, certainly you're looking at what's going to be on the floor. But if you're looking at an organization, I think the Jazz are pretty appealing.
They're very appealing, and you start with Ryan Smith, and you talked about all those things that he came with. I think the number one thing is that he grew up in basketball. He grew up through Junior Jazz. He grew up, coming to games in my era. I think I can't remember. I know I'm very old, so he may have missed some of that. But the guy is, he's a trendsetter.
Yeah.
Right. He likes to, in a sense, buck the system and do things that are different. He's so knowledgeable about the league, and if he's not, he surrounds himself with those people, as we saw with Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge, that are going to come in here and help him reach that vision that he has in winning a national championship.
Let's be clear. The goal is an NBA championship.
No question.
They make no bones about it. Like, some people say, well, why don't you just get to the Western Conference Finals, or whatever the case may be. They are very clear about what the overall goal is to get there. And obviously it takes steps. I was listening to Mike Malone after they won their championship, speaking of the Denver Nuggets.
Michael.
Yeah. And he was talking about what Pat Riley had said about the way that you develop a championship. And it starts with, you got to start by kind of breaking the trend a little bit. And you be a disruptor, and you bring yourself in, and then you go from that to a contender. And then finally, you're finally reaching the championship, but that takes time to do. And if you take a look, when Mike Malone came in to the Denver Nuggets, I remember that decision. And Denver seemed to have made some crazy decisions. They had a coach that was the coach of the year, and they fired him.
Yeah.
And so they bring in Michael Malone eventually, not right after that, but eventually, and he doesn't get the team to the playoffs for the first 3 years. But it was part of the process.
Yeah, it was part of the process. And we all know that this is such an impatient league at times, right? I mean, you can have so much really good success, but if you don't hit that ultimate goal in the time that your bosses think you should, you're moving on.
See Monty Williams.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
He's on a fast timeline.
And you're right. And I'm one of those guys who believes that what's going to get you to that, you can't get to that ultimate goal unless you struggle some, right? You learn what you need to do to be better every single year. So I like the way the Jazz are going, because I think this past team has exceeded expectations, and now are trending upward. But you've got to go through some rough patches of maybe not making the playoffs to figure out how you're going to make that next step. But I'm also a fan of talking about it.
Yeah.
There's so many teams that want to get there, but they don't talk about it enough. I think if you talk about it, there's some kind of manifestation that comes through with each, and every player knows what they're working towards, and I just like the trend right now where the Jazz are going.
Just one on that graphic that we just saw, the Nuggets, the way they built that team. There are a couple journeymen, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's been a couple places. Aaron Gordon's been a couple places. You got to get lucky, right? Nikola Jokic at 41. I mean, everybody does this job. Everybody does their homework. But 40 teams missed, right? Or 40 picks missed. But they got lucky. So, again, I think the Jazz last year, I think they found some of that luck. I don't think it was luck on Lowry Markin. I think they knew exactly what they had. But the acquisition of getting Walker Kessler, I think that sped everything up really, really quickly. Yeah.
No, I mentioned that Pat Riley quote, and I totally butchered it. So let me get that. I wrote it down. He says you start off as a nobody, then you become an upstart, then you become a winner, then you become a contender, then you become a champion. Now you think about that, that's a long way to go, right, for the Utah Jazz. But tonight's a big part of it. They've made their selection at number 9. Coming up is the number 16 pick. And there are some notable picks for the Utah Jazz at number 16, including, of course, the kid from Gonzaga.
People were asking back then, what's a Gonzaga? Seriously. I mean, I got to play with this man for a lot of years.
Tell us what it was like. Just a little bit of when you first got there and you're like, wow. I mean,
Yeah, well,
what was it about the guy?
It wasn't wild right away. Ricky Green, the dude in the back with the throw, was the starting point guard.
Fastest of them all.
Fastest of them all. They never catch him. And John Stockton came in and was a sponge. First of all, he didn't think he was going to be around that long. So if you go to him right now, I bet he still has that first contract that he had. He still got that money because he didn't spend any. And he didn't know he was going to be around at all. So he just absorbed it. And you could just start to see this young player develop into something really special. He surprised me sometimes when he got in there. I had the ball in my hands and didn't think I was open. So he just had a knack. He was a consummate gym rat.
Yeah.
And that, if he could have spent his whole career doing that, he would have been happy. Just playing basketball, none of the accolades and all that. But you think about a John Stockton in this day and age of basketball, right? I mean, the guy's a leading assist guy, leading steals. Some of those will never, if ever, be broken.
Yeah.
But what an impact. Wasn't flashy, just got it done. It was just great to be here a year before him to see that development in him and see him just take off.
Yeah, you almost wonder nowadays if he'd even have a chance.
We do wonder that.
Everybody's kind of sized out at times. They're aged out of the league and they're sized out of it. Guys too old or not big and long enough. So glad he came when he did, because I'll tell you what, that was growing up, watching a guy play personified the way you want to play every night.
Yeah, and he's a guy that was about winning. I don't think he ever asked the coach, what's my usage rate?
No.
No.
He was all about, how am I going to make this team better, right? And he was one of those guys that was fairly unassuming. I remember covering him as a broadcaster and always being just a little bit surprised at a guy with this kind of stature, right? And the way that he just kind of moved. And it was very quietly. And he had a counterpart that was bigger than life, named Karl Malone. And so maybe it made that difference a little more exaggerated because of the way that the two of them interacted together. But I think they understood Karl Malone was going to handle a lot of this stuff. And so John Stockton didn't need to. And I remember a season after the playoffs, and then the Jazz came back to camp for the next season, and we found out that John had elbow surgery over the offseason. We're like, what? Like, nobody even knew that he had been injured during the playoffs, and then went through that whole thing, quietly got it repaired, and then went about his business.
Yeah. And that's the kind of player he was. You talked about him possibly playing in this day and age. He's the kind of guy that would figure it out.
Yeah, right.
Right? He's the kind of guy that those 40 people that passed up Nikola Jokic because they saw his teenage pictures.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, John's the kind of guy who maybe no one saw that in him, but he was going to make sure in his career that he was seen. And it just changed the game. You know, you talk about the Magic Johnsons and those kind of guys. John Stockton, to me, I know I'm kind of partial because I played with him, but the guy was one of the greatest to ever play the game and didn't have to do it in a loud way.
You're seeing right now a live look at the War Room. The pick is in for Atlanta, and that means they know who will be available, and there are a lot of hugs going on right now.
Justin's on the phone.
And I think that would indicate that they got who they wanted with the 16th pick. There's Justin Zanuck with a little applause and excited about who they will get an opportunity to select at number 16. So it has not been officially announced by Atlanta who their pick is, and the commissioner will come to the podium here momentarily and make that announcement. But at least as far as indications are concerned, it would indicate that the pick has been made by Atlanta. The Jazz know that their pick, whoever they want, it's like they got their guy.
It is like the movie Draft Day, right? And guys on the phone, guys hugging. You know, it's just exciting to get that kind of look in today's game and see these guys do their work. And I know we can't hear what they're saying, but you can see with all the hugs and everything going on that things are going kind of like they planned, and that's why they are the masterminds of this game, the guys who can get in there and get it done.
This is just a culmination of so much work. You know, we listened, you know, the amount of tape that everybody watches, the things you have to do, the guys coming in to work out, all that is just time upon time upon time. So to be able to have the night go and then have it kind of fall the way you want it to, which it seems like the Jazz, there are a lot of really good players still on the board that the Jazz have a ton of interest in. So 16, they're going to get another nice player.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kobe Buffkin selected by the Atlanta Hawks, and so the Jazz know that their guy that they want is available. And I think as we were looking at the war room and to see the kids that are in there kind of enjoying that moment, and who knows, there's going to be some of those kids, whether it's Justin Zanik's kids or Ryan Smith's kids, or some of these guys, they're going to remember that when they become a GM of a team. And that's the way that these legacies are built, right? And whether it's a coaching or a GM tree that happens over years, those are the kinds of moments I think would be one of the things that I'll remember, is watching the kids running around in the war room.
Yeah, it's kind of like players, it's that DNA, and there's so many kids out here who love basketball. They may not ever get a chance to play, but now they have an opportunity to see how teams are run, and that might inspire them to want to get into being an agent or get into being a GM or a coach or something like that. Coach, you have your own journey through the coaching experience, and you're still around basketball and being able to talk about it. It's just fun to be able to watch that kind of thing develop and be a fan of it.
I think it also speaks to the special culture that exists. I mean, there's kids in the war room.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places you think Tibbs lets kids in the war room. I don't know, but I think, again, this is a special environment, and you hear the players talk about it, from the fans to the way they're treated. But it's, one thing we always try to talk about in recruiting and then live up to is it being a family environment. Obviously, that exists here.
Indeed, it does. And when we're talking about everything that goes into a selection, number 9, now at number 16, all the work that has gone into it for all of the people that are in that war room. But think about beyond that, all the scouts that have been overseas watching hours and hours and hours of tape. And the Jazz are officially on the clock. Now it says their pick is officially in, and the announcement will come momentarily. So the suspense for the night was about these 3 picks that the Utah Jazz have. Number 9, now number 16, and then later at the end of the first round. But if you're looking at the anticipation, there's plenty, as we saw, whether it's Metta World Peace or John Stockton, that there are people that are going to be available and become great players at number 16.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's been some good drafts, but it just seems that this draft has a broader selection of really, really good players. Am I right?
Yeah, really high-level ability, right? And upside and elite skill. Yeah.
I think when you're looking at the overall package and the way that players have developed, and this positionless basketball has probably impacted that to a degree. The European player has impacted that in a huge way, because the players that are coming in from overseas are so well balanced in the way that they play basketball, and that's where you think about the original stretch 4. That was a Euro thing that now is part of the NBA.
And that's kind of down this year. Not a lot of European players or foreign players, if you will. And I think some of the ones that maybe have been thinking about it have decided to stay and develop a little bit more because of all the talent that's here. And I have to really go back to college now, because I think colleges have gotten a little bit better at preparing guys with things that they run now, sets that they run. You know this better than I do. To kind of prepare these guys for this level. No longer really is it that one guy who is going to go in and be a LeBron James right away, right? You've got to take some of that you've learned the game from college and learn how to get that timing on a block shot, learn how to drop coverage, learn how to guard a pick and roll player. So I think it's really kudos to some of these college coaches who prepare a lot of these kids for this moment.
Yeah, I see a lot of that with footwork and ball screens. the real one is talking on defense. You know, you get guys that come in as young guys in the league and talk. You know, hey, they were taught guys that block out. You know, go find a body. And one lately has been the verticality rule, where you see guys who are in the circle and jump straight up. You know, they're taught that obviously here, but guys that come with that. So a lot of fundamentals taught at the college level. To your point, Thurl, I see a lot more of the spacing of the program in the college game as well.
I think so much of this one-and-done culture is developed with the teams and the schools, I should say, universities, that are preparing guys for the NBA. Because you earn your reputation, whether you're Duke or Kentucky or Kansas, and the list is actually fairly long. But you know you're going to have a player for 1 year, but the way that you take advantage of that is you make sure that he gets drafted, because then you'll get the next good player coming out of high school.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true, and that seems to be kind of that system now. And you know, there's so much to talk about college, good and bad, the NIL stuff and things that go on, but I think one thing that we have to really look at is the league, because there's no more of the type of basketball that the old Grizzlies used to play. That was kind of our old style, where you grind it out, there's lower scores.
Yeah.
To me, the game has really shifted towards offensive players, right? You got to be really special defensively. You've got to be smart as a coach to come up with those things that will stop a game that tends to favor the offensive player. So, you know, I'm excited to watch kind of how it goes with, you know, the flopping and some of the other things that players are smart enough to try to figure out now, you know, defensively and offensively. So I love the way the league is going now, and I think this new crop of kids are going to come in and show us some different things. There's always something that I learn about these kids and what they bring every single season.
To your point, I think the elimination of the Euro foul last year saved all of us about 700 hours.
Yes.
Because the games were shorter. I mean, I thought that was a great rule. It was abused. The pace of play was being affected, and I think that's what the NBA is trying to do, is get as much space and pace as possible. That's what everybody wants to see.
And I think that they wisely got rid of that take foul type of situation, or Euro foul, however you want to describe it, because whether it's a make or a miss, there are teams out there that are going to run regardless. And you know they want that kind of pace. And I still watch, you know, players. I don't know if you look at these guys. You were in great shape when you played, but I watch guys playing basketball now, and I'm like, man, I would be gassed by the second possession, because they are so up and down the court. But you have got to be in great shape. And so one of the things I remember, as you know, Will Hardy came in and took over the team, he said, we're going to be in shape. The commissioner is coming to the podium and getting ready to make the announcement for the Utah Jazz.
The Utah Jazz select Keyonte George.
There you go, Keyonte George out of Baylor. So they select a guard here.
What I tell you, they like those Baylor guys. They talk well. They talk well.
Your thoughts just off the top, Coach, about what Keyonte George can do as a guard in the NBA?
Well, he's 6'4", 185 pounds. He is a high-level, confident scorer. He is so deadly in the ball screen. He plays behind it. He's got a great pace to him, and really confident scorer. 37% from three on that Baylor team. Really quick release, and a guy that I think can be a real bona fide knockdown three-point shooter in this league. I think he needs to maybe work on his explosiveness a little bit. Being able to get by guys and do a few more things, but the only thing I know is he can really, really score the ball at an elite level, and I think that's what the Jazz were after with this pick.
I think one of his most important attributes is his handles.
Yeah.
You know, for a young kid to be able to come in and play at his own pace, not be sped up, and also able to get in that second and third gear when he needs to and get in the paint. And this young man can find his space. He can score in the paint, just rise up, and he's a good enough shooter to be able to do that. So that is, to me, the most important position. Even if you're playing point guard by committee, you got to have a guy who's going to be a threat out there, right? And if you have a guy like George who can come in and be effective with that group of guys night in, night out, he can make an impact really early for this Jazz team.
And I think one thing's been said often, during the years, the Jazz sometimes have lacked the ability for guys to make their own play, create their own shot. That is not a concern with Keyonte George. We've got a good friend, actually, Caleb Lohner, plays for the Baylor Bears, and in research this week called him. We talked about Keyonte. First and foremost, said one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet, just a terrific young man, but believes he can score on anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I think that's the mindset, obviously, that's gotten him to where he is right now.
Yeah, the confidence factor is always a big thing, right? When it gets to be overconfidence or cockiness, it can be a detriment, or it can go from being an asset to a liability. But he seems to be all the things that we've seen from him, and then playing for a good program, the Baylor Bears, allows him to kind of walk that fine line where you're pushing the envelope, but you're not to the point where you're being a detriment to yourself or to your team.
Well, you talked about confidence, and that really is an important thing, because I thought we saw it last year with a guy like Lauri Markkanen, who had to come in and discover that he was that good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just him on his own. He had to have the coaches and the players surrounding him and say, look, dude, we got to play through you.
That's right.
Right? So that makes all the difference in the world when you come to that locker room as a young player with the talent that you have, like a George will, and your teammates are saying, look, go get it. Right? And that just gives you that much confidence without being overconfident, but it gives you that much collective confidence with the team behind you. And that helps your growth. That helps that growth spurt happen quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be another guy that can come in and really challenge for minutes. We talked to Ochai here. Obviously, he made great strides last year, but that's what you hope with Keyonte. Again, the confidence thing. One piece, in talking to people, just a little more oomph defensively, and that'll come, right? But one thing I love about him playing at Baylor is every game mattered. He was not out there just trying to get stats. He was out there trying to win games, and playing at Baylor, every game mattered, and he had to perform.
And the thing I liked as a rookie coming in, when I was coming in, and I was the 7th pick of the draft, the players who were already there, they went at me.
Yeah.
They went at me because they knew it was going to make me better.
Yeah.
Right? And those first few elbows I got from guys, because they're fighting for their jobs too.
Right.
Right? So you're going in there, and if you're good enough, you're going to be playing someone else's minutes. So that's healthy competition for a guy like Keyonte George to come in and bring that confidence with him, but also get shut down sometimes and say, "Oh, young fella, right? You got some more work to do."
That's right. Yeah.
Well, the Jazz picked a forward with Taylor Hendricks, the number 9 pick. They've added a guard with Keyonte George. Take a look at the updated depth chart for the Utah Jazz as they add another guy that can play the guard position, point guard position. We already talked about the fact that last year you had 5 different guys that started for the Utah Jazz at that point guard spot. And now you got Keyonte George who can make a contribution, and he's got some good size. He's not 6'6", but at 6'4", it allows him to be kind of in a space where he can guard some bigger defend some bigger guys.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about point guards for the Jazz and what we saw, Mike Conley was the purest sense of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting up there in age, not as quick, as he was, but just a smart, great, valuable point guard. And you look at some of the other things that happened. Colin Sexton had to kind of develop into a guy who could at least pass it, because he had tunnel vision, right? But he's good at it, right? He's getting by guys, he's scoring. I thought he got better at kind of playing at his own pace a little bit. But a guy like Keyonte George seems to me that he can be that guy that drives to the basket, may not have anything, has that search dribble, right? And he can find guys on the fly. If he doesn't have anything, the ball moves. I think that's what the Jazz really need. Taylor Horton-Tucker, I thought, did a stellar job with his big body at running people over and getting to the basket. But I think you need that calm, collective point guard that you can develop into a guy who can just play at his own pace and find guys and also get his own.
And it's always nice to have a combo guy that's got a mind for scoring, but passing. Average 15 a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. So he's got the ability to, you know, it seems to me he's got a real good understanding of the game. But you look at the breakdown of who the Jazz now have at guard, there's a lot of difficult, the way that Colin Sexton comes at you. Ochai Agbaji's ability in space and to rise up and dunk on you. And now you had Keyonte George, again, a guy who can play behind ball screens, be crafty, find his own points, coming together pretty nice.
And the good thing for the Jazz.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Go out to ZBBC. JP Chunga is with the head coach, Will Hardy.
Well, Coach, your first draft as a head coach of an organization, how's it going so far there in the War Room?
Yeah, it's going really well. Obviously, Danny, Justin, their group has put in so much work over the entire course of the season, and in particular the last couple of months to culminate in these decisions. You know, the fans and everybody get to kind of see this last part, but I think everybody feels really, really good about the players that we were able to get. Puts us in a great spot moving forward.
So let's start with Taylor Hendricks, picked at 9 out of UCF. What stands out when you were able to watch him?
Yeah, I think number one, he just doesn't take possessions off. Like, this is a guy that's going to really fit into our culture here in Utah of, you know, playing really, really hard for our fans every night. You know, he's a great shot blocker defensively, showed the ability to shoot the ball from the perimeter. He's young. Both the guys we drafted are young. And so I think for me as a coach, it's, you know, the work starts now to try to help them reach their full potential, but to help us win games.
A couple of freshmen that you drafted. The other one is the Big 12 freshman of the year, Keyonte George. What stood out about him?
Yeah, I think Keyonte has a really good swagger about him. He's got a good confidence in his game. Offensively, very, very talented. Can score in a variety of ways. He's a guy that can really play pick and roll. You know, our league is definitely a league where you need people that can create shots, not for just themselves, but for others. And so that's going to be something that, you know, we're looking to build with him moving forward.
What are they in for when they show up to the Jazz practice facility? What is the identity that you're trying to build with these two players and the rest of the group?
Yeah, I think number one, like, they're with us now. Like, this is their home. Moving is hard. This is a big moment in their lives, and there's going to be a lot of moving parts. I think our number one responsibility is to welcome them to the organization, but also to the community, and help them and their families get settled. And then we got to get to work. The competitiveness is something that we're always going to emphasize every day. I think that's something that our fans and fan base really resonate with. So a lot of work to be done. But step one is getting them here in Salt Lake, putting our arms around them and welcoming them, you know, to the party.
Are they going to have fun? Because I've heard fun is underrated.
Fun is underrated for sure. I hope they enjoy their night tonight in New York, celebrating with their families. This is a huge accomplishment for them. You know, that's what we're doing here in Utah. We're going to work really hard, but we'll have some fun along the way.
Jazz head coach Will Hardy here at the practice facility.
JP, thank you very much. Always good to hear, of course, from the head coach and his thoughts on the picks. And he was quick to point out that, man, these guys do a lot of work. Speaking of the front office, right, the brain trust, if you will. And then he has the opportunity now to, as he talked about, welcoming them to the family. And now it's time to go to work, but have fun at the same time.
Brings back a lot of memories.
Yes.
It really does. I mean, we know it's a collective effort in there, and a lot goes into picking a Thurl Bailey at number 7, right? A lot goes into picking these guys and saying we believe that he can fit in what we have right now and make an impact right away. We don't want to wait 2-3 years. We think that he can bring something right now to this team. And from what we've seen of this team last year, you've got a collection of guys who are going to embrace him and bring him along just fine, Coach.
Yeah, I think that's the overwhelming thing to me. I think Coach Hardy, his approach is so unique. I mean, he's a guy who can really jump into you. We've seen that. But then you also hear these great free throw contests that he has with guys after practice. And so I think that there is a great balance. I think there's a, time to be serious and get after it. And then, like he said, there's a time to have fun. And I think to me, the Jazz have a great balance, from the top down. We just talked about the war room aspect of things. But these guys are going to be really, I think their eyes will be open to just how big time this whole organization is.
Yeah, and it starts from the top down. Ryan Smith, the owner, is going to join JP here in just a moment. We might have to jump out of whatever conversation we're having. But I always think about how important culture is. And the Jazz have always had a specific culture. It was a family culture, but it was, we're going to bring in quality character type players, and we're going to develop talent. And those are things I think that become important as far as defining what this franchise is. And sometimes you run into situations where it's difficult. You have to make some hard decisions. And I always admire the franchises and organizations that are able to stay true to their culture. And some of that is being able to make sure that you bring in the right guys. And that's not just players, that's front office people, and that's what, Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Ryan Smith, that's what that whole group is all about. And Jim Olsen, and the list is long, but when you're looking at culture, you want to be able to have guys that understand and love this franchise. I think of Chris Barney as one of the guys that comes to mind, has been around for so many years, and now it has grown into the position that he has with the Utah Jazz.
Well, I think culture is the most important.
Yeah.
I really do. If you don't have, regardless of what these guys can do on the basketball court, in this day and age especially, if you're not in the right culture, the right situation, and that's not just about basketball. I mean, these young men are coming from different places, right? Some of them have grown up in a different way than others, but the culture that they're going to has to be one, accepting, one, nurturing, one, developing, right? One, full of communication. I've got to know, I know that I got to put the work in, but I want to know what you want out of me.
Yeah.
I want to be coachable, right? I want to be around guys who are going to build me up. I know it's not going to be, rainbows and ponies all the time, because it's a business. But the culture, I think, is the very most important thing. And Coach Hardy has been brilliant at communicating with these guys. He talked about Mike Conley. He said, well, Mike can teach me more than I can ever teach him, right? And it just takes that kind of coach who can communicate with each and every individual player and then collectively keep them together, because we know how some locker rooms can get, right? And the really good teams don't let it get outside of that, because as a family, you're going to have disagreements, right? But culture is number one.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It doesn't matter if you're running a business, you're organizing a trip, coaching a basketball team. Culture is number one. I think you have the ability to kind of frame the narrative for how we're going to do things. And I do believe the Jazz, I feel like the Spurs have been another organization, but always on the forefront of really what's important and staying true to that.
Yeah.
And I see that, often with this organization, and it just seems like it just continues. It's a great tradition.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that has kind of defined the Utah Jazz over the years. And there have been times when, it didn't work out that way, and you brought in a player that you're just like, maybe we should have gone a different direction. You can't hit 100% in any business, but you still, that is what your aspiration is to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm in a very unique position now, as a color analyst guy. I get to travel with these guys and get to know them a little bit better. So it's not even just on the court and in the locker room, right? It's in the community. It's, being asked to do something and not thinking that you're too big for it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of the whole culture of I think, the way the Jazz have always looked at bringing players in. Now, it hasn't always worked out because it's not a perfect thing. but it's an important thing for this organization, an important thing for Ryan and all these guys who are bringing these guys together. You don't have that, you might as well forget about winning games.
And you mentioned that Will Hardy is the most important as far as that culture is concerned because of the touches that he has with the players. And I think about how difficult that is to manage at different times, especially when you're in the middle of a losing streak. Okay, you're going through rough times. We talked about this earlier in the broadcast, and how valuable those tough times can be if you manage them properly and you're able to learn and grow from them, as opposed to just completely disintegrating, which we've seen happen with different franchises over the years if they start to lose and then everything falls apart. But to have a locker room where you can battle in practice and fight for your position, and you know that it's fluid, and we've seen that with Will Hardy. Guys can be on the bench for, you're going to have 8, 10 DNPs, coach's decision, and all of a sudden they're getting playing time, and what the information we get is, well, this guy earned it in practice. Yeah. And it's easy to hang your head and say, you know what, it's not working out, I'm going to demand a trade, whatever the case may be. But to have a culture where you know that that's part of the process.
Well, I think Coach can really speak more to that. I mean, you've been there.
No, it is everything. I mean, the teams, people ask me all the time, well, what teams, what made a team better than another, and it wasn't always talent. It was cohesiveness, it was trust. Trust is a huge word anymore, and I think that those were huge things. But just want to make sure to give credit to the Millers. The Millers, they're the ones that, and then obviously Jerry and your group. I mean, the Utah Jazz are seen as a overachieving, hard hat wearing, going to wear you out, going to hit you as hard as they can, and then they're going to shake your hand and be classy afterwards. And I think that that's what I loved about watching this year's team play. Didn't see a whole lot of pouting, didn't see guys feeling sorry for themselves. Most games they were the underdog. But I do believe that culture, and it's why, people say they should have tanked. I was never in the tank camp, because I think there is just more you get from a year's worth of developing culture than any one player can ever give you.
There you go.
I think you make a great point, because you talk about culture is built on a foundation, and that foundation was laid by Larry Miller, right? And then having Jerry Sloan be the one to stay here for, becoming the longest tenured when he was still coaching in professional sports. And there was a certain respect that was given from the ownership, from Larry Miller to that man, speaking of Jerry Sloan. And so, those kinds, and of course Frank Layton's the one that brings Jerry in. I mean, there's all of these things that are such a critical core part of who the Utah Jazz are. And when we look up at the banners that are hanging in the rafters here and waiting for a championship banner to hang, it all happens with the foundation that you see in the arena now.
Well, you can go all the way, you can go right to Ryan Smith, who acquired the team, right, from the Millers, from Dale Miller. He grew up in that, so he knew.
That's right.
And I think when you're the Millers and, you're turning that baton over to a new guy, there's some things that you discuss about the culture, right? That, maybe you're not making a lot of demands, but I think a guy like Ryan understands what that culture has been. He wants to keep a lot of that intact and then put his own spin on it.
And I think there comes times for the Millers when they were ready, and I don't know that they would have been ready if Ryan Smith had not been ready.
There you go.
Right, for that to happen. And to your point, T, and we saw some of this during the All-Star festivities that were here, and Ryan Smith talking about growing up and going to the All-Star game that had been 30 years prior. And then to have his kids be able to have that kind of experience, that's what he wanted for them. And to have ownership that values that so much, and Ryan and Ashley have both talked about this extensively, they had opportunities to do this somewhere else, but they wanted to do it here. and the opportunity did present itself, and I think that's a win for both the Smiths and for Utah.
No question.
Yeah.
No, absolutely no doubt.
Well, I think about the Utah Jazz, and we looked at the updated future draft, picks for the Utah Jazz. Now 2 of them have been used, and the Jazz have the number 28 pick coming up here in the first round of the 2023 NBA draft. And some people would wonder, do you need 3 first-round picks? I'm curious. Do you need that many?
I don't know if it's about need. It's about what you got.
Yeah.
Right? It's about what you've been able to, what Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have been able to create.
Yeah.
Right? That's value. Now, they could have done a lot with that. Right? They could have said, well, let's use that. Let's get a veteran guy in here, and let's see if we can get there quicker. No. You can see where their head's at right now. They want to develop this team. They want this team to make strides every single season, so they're bringing the talent in. So, do you need it? Well, you got it. Now, how are you going to use it? And it's just great to see these guys excited about the decisions that they make.
Go ahead.
I sequestered myself like 4 days. I don't know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow as a job father because I just dug into this so much. But I can't tell you after seeing, just the picks and now seeing those 2 names, Hendricks and George, knowing now, that they're guys, knowing what their game is, how it can fit here, it's exciting. Those are now not numbers, they're names.
Yeah.
Those guys will now be in town. Summer League's just around the bend. And here we go. Basketball Christmas.
Yeah, basketball Christmas indeed. I think about, we've mentioned multiple times, whether it's Denver, who built through the draft and won a championship, or the Golden State Warriors, who built through the draft and won a championship. For the Utah Jazz, I asked the question, do you need 3? 3 is nice to have because you can, take advantage of that building, that process. We're going to get an opportunity now to talk with the number 9 pick for the Utah Jazz, Taylor Hendricks, joining us now live from Brooklyn. And Taylor, congratulations, number 1. We're very excited here in Utah. It's Alema Harrington, Big T, Thurl Bailey, and Tim LaComb. We're part of the broadcast team here for the Utah Jazz. Excited to have you as part of the franchise. Just your overall thoughts on what it was like to sit there and then have your name announced as the number 9 pick going to the Utah Jazz.
I mean, it was crazy. I remember my workout with the Utah Jazz. I got to meet the owner and the head coach and a lot of the background guys, and I felt pretty good about the team. So I mean, for them to pick me 9th is a blessing. It's crazy.
Taylor, 40 years ago, I was drafted by the Utah Jazz in the 7th pick, and it wasn't as big a party as it is now. Talk to me about your family and the feelings there about your life, about the change.
I mean, I'm ready. Like, this is a dream that I've had since I was young. And support me, this is a blessing. Yeah.
Taylor, congratulations. I love the threads, man. Very, very nice.
The fit.
Bring some.
The fit,
Sorry, threads is old. The fit. I like the fit. If you were to tell Jazz fans about your game, tell us a couple of the things you feel like you do really well.
Some things I feel like I do really well is, first of all, my defense. I feel like I'll play really well alongside Walker Kessler. He's really good at blocking shots. I'm really good at blocking shots. So, we're going to be a really good defensive team. And also with Lauren Markkinen, his ability to shoot the ball and him being a big man, very versatile. I feel like I have some of his skill set too. So for all of us to play together, and then Colin Sexton, he's a dog. I remember watching his high school highlights after Dr. Hendricks play on the same team with him, and then Brandon Carey as well. I went to high school with him my 9th grade year, so to be back up with him is going to be crazy. I'm excited for all of it.
Well, Taylor, we're here at a draft party that's at the Delta Center where the Utah Jazz play. And if you don't know this yet, you will learn this very quickly. We have the best fans in the entire NBA, and you have an opportunity to speak to the group that has been gathered here for draft night. if you had a message for Jazz Nation, what would it be?
My message for Jazz Nation would definitely be like, I'm just ready to play in the arena, ready to meet all you guys, and we're gonna have a lot of fun in Utah, man.
Do you know anything about Salt Lake City, and what are you looking forward to most about getting up here to Utah for your press conference and then getting settled in?
Definitely meeting my teammates. I know it's really cold in Utah, so I'm ready to have like snowball fights with my teammates. Just I don't know, just have fun. Have fun.
Absolutely. Congratulations once again, Taylor, and we're looking forward to you being here for your press conference and to get a chance to meet you face to face and you to get a feel for what Salt Lake City and the state of Utah and the Utah Jazz are all about. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Jazz Nation, Taylor.
Let's go, Taylor.
There you go. Taylor Hendricks, selected number 9 by the Utah Jazz, and for those at home that have been watching us on YouTube, we hadn't had a chance to show everybody what his fit was, but the all pink shawl collar looked really nice.
Oh yeah, you know me. I like a man in a good suit. I like that color too.
Yeah.
Really wore well on him, and that's why I'm excited to get going. Because you know how we do. You know how we do, right?
I know you got some.
You know how we do. You too.
I was so disappointed when I heard we were wearing polos tonight. Man, I went and got a Dumb and Dumber tux. I had the tails, I had the hat, I had the cane, the whole thing.
You should have still worn it.
But we got the shoes.
We got the shoes. We're straight on the shoes, man.
Yeah, baby. No, he seems like a great kid, obviously. What an amazing night for him, and the fit was
on
perfect.
point.
Yeah,
on point.
That will stand the test of time.
I'm excited about the snowball fights.
Yeah. You're going to get involved in that?
That was awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful thing. One of the things as I look back on my career as a college athlete and then on to the NBA for you and all the traveling that you did, both as a player and as a coach, is opportunities to see really the world. And sometimes, just the United States, so many of us have not had the opportunity to travel. But what an unbelievable blessing that is. And then to hear a guy that's, coming from someplace where snow isn't part of his life, it's like, man, I can't wait to have a snowball fight. And that's a fun part of what this opportunity is for a lot of these players.
Well, it is. That's part of that life-changing time they're going to go through. Now, obviously, travel is different than when I played, right? You had to be at the airport, at commercial airport, at the gate at 4 a.m. in the morning. And obviously, these players, I don't know if I truly believe, depending on the player, in that rookie wall anymore.
Yeah.
Just because these players are just, they're really taken care of as far as their bodies, the physical part of the game, their diets, things like that. They're really taught how to take care of themselves.
Recovery's huge.
Recovery is the most important thing as well.
It didn't exist, right?
That's right.
You probably dumped ice in the bath at the hotel, and that was as good as it got.
That's it.
And, there was a time when, even as a college player, you played 30 games, plus in a college season. That was the rookie wall. You get to 30-plus games, and it's like, boom, you hit a wall in the NBA, and you're not even halfway there in an 82-game season. So it's very different. But at the same time, kids are playing year-round at a much higher level than they once did, where you play your college season, then you kind of have a summer or an off-season. There's no off-season anymore.
Well, the nice thing, too, about being able to come here, and even a lot of teams, is you don't have to play a ton of minutes, everybody, right? You've got enough guys, you've got a deep enough bench where guys don't have to play a ton of minutes.
Excuse me, we're going to get back out to CBBC and JP Chunga with the owner of the Utah Jazz, Ryan Smith.
Here with the governor of the Utah Jazz, Ryan Smith. The Jumbotron is looking at us right now. If you have a message to the Jazz fans at the Delta Center, what are you going to say?
Hey, everyone, thanks for showing up. Haven't had a chance to slip over there yet, but I've seen the lines. I heard about it. Big shout out to Jason and J-Dogs for stepping up to cook that many dogs for everyone, and Coca-Cola for jumping in. But most of all, Jazz Nation, we love you. Our fans are better than anyone on the planet. And I can't wait till our new draft picks and our new teammates come and they get to experience Jazz Nation.
So it's your first time having the collaboration and seeing it up close in the war room. What have you enjoyed watching Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Will Hardy at work?
Well, so first, you know, I think we're really pleased on where we ended up, and I know everyone always says that, but with DA, you know, I feel like we were looking at either one of these choices could have gone as early as 9, or we wouldn't have been surprised if someone would have taken them at 6 or 7 or 8. And I actually fortunately had a chance to get to know both of these kids as they came out here and worked out, and you know, they both have it in them. They both have the dog, which is I think something really special. And we've got two kids who you want to be around, and coming into this organization and where we are right now, I think it's a perfect fit.
When we were able to see you just off to the side make a life-changing phone call to one of the draft picks, what is it, the scenario, the team that they're going to be on when they join this franchise?
Yeah, I think when Taylor was here, you know, I ended up sitting down next to him and having, you know, a half-hour conversation about organization, about life, about Utah, what life would be in Utah, how we roll, and just getting him prepped on that. I actually have everyone who came in for a workout. I talked to Taylor more than everyone, and he's just a good kid. He was responding, he was engaging, he was back, he was asking questions, he was curious. And so when I was able to call him, he was like, dude, you were the last workout. We had that long conversation. Can you believe we're here? And he's like, I love the hat. So he loved his Jazz hat that he put on, and it looked good.
Well, he's going to be wearing it a whole lot more now that he's on the team. I've heard you say you can't tiptoe to a championship.
Yep.
How are you pushing this organization to get that goal and finally climb that mountain?
Let's be honest. I mean, we got Danny Ainge and Jay-Z and Coach Hardy. Like my job is to absolutely empower them, you know, and they need to have a safe environment where they can take risk, which we've done at many points, and they need to have a safe environment where they know that we're one team and they can try to make the best decision and know that sometimes it might be a step back or a step forward or a little bit of risk, or might not look clear to everyone else. That's okay. And I think they know that, in the dynamic in which we can all work together, then our organization with the players we have, that gives us a really, really good chance. And so I just think that, you know, we've got a lot of draft capital coming up, and we've got to get really good at developing players. And that's just going to be part of who we are. And we love that about Coach, and we love Danny's eye, obviously. If you look at the history and what he's done, it's pretty impressive. And so I think coming in together, that collaboration, it's pretty exciting right now, and it's a good vibe all the way around. And I think people in the NBA are going to want to be a part of that.
The future of watching the Jazz just got a whole lot easier with the broadcast deal that you just announced. What went into the deal, and what made KJazz a great home, and also the streaming option on UtahJazz.com?
Yeah, so we had a couple of different options on where to put it. The whole goal was that our fans would be able to almost trip over the Jazz games wherever they would go. So it was that simple to find them. But reality, it was something for the fans. Like everywhere I go, people are loving the Jazz and want to be a part of it. And it came down to 2 or 3 options of where we could put Jazz games. There was a little bit of a financial equation. But at the end of the day, you know, I was brought back to how I watched it as a kid and how I became a lifelong Jazz fan. And there was a chance to do that. And we ran to it. And then we've got to go figure out all the other channels for fans that maybe want to look at it a different way. And so, you know, we believe this is a model that's never been done in sports so far. It's unique, but it's a massive bet on Utah, and it's a massive bet on our fans. And I'm bullish. I'm bullish on the state, and I'm bullish on our fan base that we can go make a move like this and say, hey, it's open for everyone. This is how it's going to be. And there's a personalized experience for every single fan to get the games how they want to see it. Right. And I think that's what this is about. And like, I think that's a big opportunity for our players because they want to be on the big stage. Well, let's make that stage bigger.
More fans. And I've
100%.
heard you say that this broadcast deal connects us all. Yep. Can you expand more upon that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of work that the organization's going through, and we want everyone to be able to see that. But I also think that the Jazz are a unique spot in Utah where it's something that we can all try to agree upon and come together on, no matter where you are. And I actually think it goes beyond Utah. I mean, if you look at Idaho, you look at Wyoming, you look at our global nature. I think that that's what we have. Instead of serving 1 million people, there's 3.2 million people in the state. There's neighboring states, and then there's a bunch of people who have ties to Utah all over the world. Like, we want to make sure that they can be fans, as well as the players that come here, like Lowry, who has a really strong presence in Finland. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to address that? How are we going to take advantage of that and create Jazz fans everywhere?
SEG Media is the other portion of the deal that was announced this week. What's the goal behind having that production company?
Well, I think we've always done production. I mean, it's been something we have, which actually made this possible. But to say we're in the business is very different. You know, we have one of the principles here. We're going all in. We're going all in on media. That's what we're going to do. And it's stuff just like this. It's getting Tim LaComb on TV for the draft, which is a lifelong dream. Yeah. Like, how does that happen? He's even cleaned up, slicked back, and shaved up. Like, I don't know. Man, I wish I was just sitting right next to Timmy right there. So I think, like, this is new. This is different. And this is just the beginning. I mean, we flipped this up in a couple of days. Like, imagine what we're going to be able to do. And I think that's a cool opportunity.
He's the governor of the Utah Jazz. Let's go back to the beards up at the desk. Alema, Thurl, and Tim LaComb.
Thank you very much.
It's not just a face for radio, is it?
No, absolutely. It's a beard for TV.
Get a shout out from the governor.
Look at you. You know, I think about, if you're wondering what the future of the Utah Jazz is, what it's going to look like, you take that response that Ryan Smith just gave to the reason why we did the broadcast deal. It was all about the fan experience. And, you know, as he's talking about some of the principles and values for the Utah Jazz, one of them is all in. And he talked about, you know, we've been in production. We've been part of this production group here with the Utah Jazz for many, many years. But it's different when you become a media company, and that's what the Utah Jazz are now, or SEG Media is now, you know, Smith Entertainment Group Media is. We're in the media business.
Yeah. And you really have to believe in your fan base, right? You really have to know your fans and know what they want. And sometimes even, I mean, we know Ryan hasn't gotten to where he is today without taking risks, right? But when you believe something so strongly, you take that jump. And Ryan is the kind of guy who is so creative. You know, he talked about empowerment. He talked about empowering his guys. I do too, man. I do too, because it trickles down to everybody. You know, the empowerment of Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck, and then Coach Hardy, and then the team, and us to bring it to the folks, and then the fans. You know, we go on the road. You guys see it on TV. Yeah. There are Jazz Nations everywhere. Yeah. Right? Jazz Nation is everywhere. And it's just fun to see that. Now it's fun to see us more connected with this new TV and streaming deal.
A couple of things. And first of all, I just love Ryan's transparency. You know, you don't feel like you're being sold. Kind of tells you what's going on. I think he did the entire process, but I think everybody needs to know that there was a ton of money that could have gone in his pocket left on the table. Yeah. In order for this to be accessible, like he said, to be able to trip over a Jazz game. I think it's an awesome way to say it, but this is about everyone, and I just love that word. He also talked about another important word when it comes to these guys coming in, and that's development. You know, this entire organization, really, from ground up, you know, it's a development thing. And these guys come in, I've seen it. I feel like these guys get better. I feel like the G League situation, as I mentioned earlier, is great here. But you empower, you trust, you've got great culture, you've got a fan experience like no other. And now we're starting to put those guys in place. This place is going to be rocking for a lot of years to come.
Yeah. And I think about one of the other things he said, I'm bullish about this team. I'm bullish about the state of Utah. Yeah. And we see that in the, you know, the risks that he's taken to go out and pursue different things here within the state. and not be apologetic about Salt Lake City or the state of Utah, but to boldly put that out in front and say, we're proud of this. And whether it's Silicon Slopes all the way here to now the newly renamed Delta Center, those are all part of it.
Yeah, and we're so fortunate here because we all know that this NBA is a business, and you've seen other teams go through selling franchises to groups who aren't really connected to the community, right? It's a transaction, right? But for a guy to have grown up in it, to take it from a family who built it, right? It was just a great transition, but to see the personality of Orion Smith starting to come out in the things that he does with Fight for the Fight, the first to do it.
That was totally disruptive.
You know what I mean? And other teams are looking at it like, wow, why didn't we think of that? Yeah. Well, you don't have Orion Smith, first of all. Yeah. So it's fun for us to be a part of it and then to watch that and to be able to send that out to Jazz Nation.
You guys want to jump in the time machine real quick?
I'm always in the time machine.
1984. I know it makes you think about winning a national championship. BYU, I was on a national championship team. I'm not sure if you were born in 1984 or not, Coach.
I was like, I was siphoning gas somewhere.
You were 14. You look good, man.
Thanks, man.
Well, something else happened. The Utah Jazz in the 1984 draft selected John Stockton, number 16 overall, a kid from Gonzaga. And a lot of people didn't know what Gonzaga even was. And I'm not sure the franchise or John Stockton was very sure he would be here for very long. And we're going to jump in the time machine and kind of revisit that 1984 draft of John Stockton.
I did get a degree in business. That again goes back to you better take care of the necessities, and never ever in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be playing professional basketball.
Actually, the person who first mentioned him to me was Fran McCarthy, for the coach of Weber State. And this fellow had said, he said, we saw this guard who's just terrific. You ought to look at him, he's something special.
And I was a projected 4th or 5th round pick during my season at Gonzaga. And so I was just looking for a possibility of a tryout. And then one thing happened after another. And all of a sudden comes draft day, and I've heard that maybe a possibility late in the 1st round or 2nd round. So because of that, we all watched the TV that day. A bunch of people came over to the house.
Utah's turn came. I said, watch out for Utah.
The Utah Jazz select John Stockton of Gonzaga University.
Hearing that on the TV set, I just walked out in the other room. I didn't really quite know how to act. It was a surprise, and yet it was a challenge. It was a lot of things.
I think people didn't know who he was, so there was shock and surprise. And I have to say this, I was not fully convinced it was the right thing to do. And we drafted him primarily as a backup to Ricky Green, who was an all-star point guard and quite a great player in his own rights.
I'd like to say that I'm very excited at the possibility of playing with the Utah Jazz. They're looking for a point guard to back up Ricky Green. He was an all-star player last year.
Before John could join the Jazz, he first had to sign with them.
Well, he held out a little bit. A lot of people don't realize that. You know, he had a lot of confidence in himself, and he had a lot of moxie. And we tried to sign him for the absolute minimum. And I even threatened him one time and told him, okay, I told his agent that you better get him a road map and an apple, because he's going to be over playing in Italy or Greece or something. He's not going to be playing in the NBA.
The two sides eventually agreed to terms, and John signed a contract worth $80,000, $5,000 more than the league minimum. After that, it was time for the fresh-faced rookie to hit the hardwood.
We thought he had some physical talent, but we didn't know what was in here, and we didn't know what was in here. We were getting a highly intelligent, very competitive player.
I think that last comment from Coach Layden, when he pointed to his heart, we didn't know what was in here, and then pointing to his head, or what was in here. Those things are, you know, they're not the measurables, they're the intangibles that John Stockton had. And the number 16th pick in the 1984 draft becomes a Hall of Famer.
Guys, he held out for $5 grand. He held out for $5 grand. And when he came to town, and John will attest to this, because I kind of took him under my wing, like, Mark Eaton and Darryl Griffith did me. I would go pick him up from his apartment, and he opened the cabinet, and I don't know if you remember Krusty's pancakes.
Oh, yeah.
That's all he had. That's all he would eat. Because he could get the deal on him. He didn't know whether he was going to be around that long. He didn't have his heat. He didn't have his heat turned on in the winter. I'm like, John, turn the heat on. Oh man, I'm not spending money on warming my apartment up. I don't know how long I'm going to be around. And the rest is history.
The quote of that whole thing, though, is a map and an apple. I mean, who says it better than that? Like, that is absolutely quintessential, Frank Layden. I guess you got to have Purser's script, and he gave him some nourishment and a map. He thought he maybe find where he needed to go in Europe, but it turned out far different.
You know, back to we've heard it a couple of times over the course of the evening. You guys have mentioned it as well, the importance of development. And sometimes development is being able to discover what's already there, right? And allow it to come out, or provide an environment where it can come out. And you see that in a player like John Stockton, who had all those things inside of him, including the work ethic, to be able to fine-tune that to the point where his name is hanging in the rafters and he'll have unbreakable. There's very few unbreakable records, in my opinion. And I'm going to say unbreakable. People do not play long enough to get the steals record and the assist record, which he holds in the NBA, and then to become a Hall of Famer. But those things were all within, inside of John Stockton, and they came out while he was here. And what a blessing to have a guy of that stature play his entire career at one place.
Well, guys, at a different level, of course, but when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I was 6'5" and 6'7", respectively. The coach cut me both years.
You had a horrible attitude.
Well, I couldn't play. That was one of the factors.
You're thinking of usage rate.
There was a coaching change. Another guy came in. I decided to try out again, and he kept me on the team. This is what changed my life. He brought me in and he said, Thurl, I see potential in you. Because, Coach, you know as well as I do, sometimes you have to have a lens. You have to have that lens to see what nobody else can see, maybe at the time. You can see what a player can be by some of the intangibles he has, and that's what happened to John. And Coach, I know you've seen a lot of players in that way that maybe no one was looking at, but you saw something different in them. And that's exactly what historically this organization has been able to do with players.
You guys were probably both here working, but two of my more prized possessions, I was here for the assist record, and I have that little certificate they gave us at the game, and I was here for the steals as well. So I was, John, I was a student of the game. I was never a great player, but I loved the nuance, and I loved the strategy. And I don't know that there's a guy that I took more pride in watching than John. I loved the way he battled and the way he cared. He always knew the score.
Yeah, and he was one of those guys that in a world where guys can be extravagant or attention-seeking, he did it in a very quiet way. And this was probably the best fit possible for him to be partnered with a Karl Malone, and starting with Frank Layden on to Jerry Sloan, in a system that they will forever be known as the greatest pick and roll tandem of all time, unstoppable.
And you know what? It's so fun for me to think that a lot of those dimes went to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Chill, my hair's standing up. Can you see it, Coach?
You were a big part of the spacing, though, as I recall. I mean, be able to make that,
I was ahead of my time.
Short court. Yeah, you were a stretch guy.
6'11", 3.
Come on, baby.
All right, we're going to jump back in the time machine. I'm looking for the card. I can't find it. But this one has to do with the mailman, Karl Malone.
The Utah Jazz are very happy to announce that in the 13th pick of the first round of the 1985 draft, that we're going to bring a mailman.
select Karl Malone of
You got the man that you were going after.
Yeah, we got it, and it surprised me. It really did.
In the last 5 years that I've been coaching here, I want to say one thing. We got a lot of rebounds left over. Can you get them for us? I'll take it.
Everything happened for the better, you know, and I just want to say thanks to everybody at Louisiana Tech. Even though I'm not a Bulldog, my heart goes out to everybody back home. And I want to say thank God for letting me be here today.
It's been awesome just to watch some of these old, videos back then, film. I mean, literally film of some of the historic moments for this Utah Jazz franchise. I think of what Karl Malone and John Stockton have done, and the statues obviously are out in front of the Delta Center, and the changes that they made to this entire state. Immeasurable, and that's the beauty of athletics, in my opinion, is the way that it can bring communities together and do things like what the Utah Jazz as an organization have done for this state.
Well, I had a really good view. I had a great view. I got here a year before John and 2 before Karl. And I have to say this, I had some time, a chance to spend a little time today with Karl and reminisce a little bit, but every time I drive by those statues out there, it fills me with pride to know that I was a part of that, right? And, I look at what's happening today in the draft, and these kids, they have no idea what's ahead of them. I mean, and if they play it right, they come in and work hard, do the things they're supposed to do, they can have great careers in this league. And maybe not as great as those two, but, who knows?
One of my favorite things after games, I do pre and post for radio, have the last few years. It's quiet by the time I leave. Everybody else is gone, and we've gone an hour or so after. But particularly on snowy nights, quiet snowy nights, walking past those statues. And, we talked about the work that goes into the draft, but just what it means to those two guys, what they've meant to this place. And, so there's a reverence around that to me. I feel that a lot, so. Honor again to grow up in an era of watching John and Karl play.
Yeah, we think about, we've talked about the culture of the Utah Jazz, where that foundation was built and how it was built. And it didn't happen overnight. And sometimes there were hard, moments in the building of that foundation. But certainly, I love what you said, feeling like you're a part of that, And so, no, you may not be as great. You might not be a Hall of Famer, but you come and you play for this franchise, and you've been part of an important and, I think, an honorable legacy. And that means a lot.
And you have to, you can't forget to honor your past. And I will go straight to Larry Miller. We almost were not in Utah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you always got to go back to Larry and Gail and what they started.
Let's jump out to interview right now with Keyonte George, pick number 16 by the Utah Jazz. We're very grateful to have some time with you, Keyonte. First off, congratulations. And what does it feel like to be a member of the Utah Jazz?
My talents. Man, I'm just blessed to, be in an organization like this. Great guys around, great culture. Man, I'm excited to get down and get to work.
Keyonte, Jazz Nation is listening to you right now. Tell us some things that you're going to bring to this organization.
I'm sorry, you can cut out. What'd you say?
Tell Jazz Nation who listen to you right now some of the things that you're excited to bring as a basketball player here to the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I feel like my scoring ability is, one of the best. I'm able to score at all 3 levels, play above the rim, create for myself, but also create for my teammates. Defensively, just, being a dog, going rotations, just being that all-around player. that's going to continue to make winning plays and, give it everything, that I got.
Keyonte, welcome to Utah, my friend. We share a common friend, Caleb Lohner. Caleb played with him at Baylor this year. Talk about your experience at Baylor and what you take from your time there and what you learned most from Coach Scott Drew.
Fun fact, Caleb was my roommate during the year. But Coach Drew, he really helped me understand that, in order to be, really, really great, in this, you got to be able to do things that you're not willing to do or that you don't feel like doing, at the end of the day, carry yourself like a pro. If something is needed of you, you those are the things that he really, helped me value, coming into.
Keyonte, we appreciate the time. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with the feed right now, but we are so grateful that you took a little time out of an important day to spend some time with your new home, the Utah Jazz. And you talk about life-changing moments, right? Not just for players, but for their entire families. These can be generational type of changes that can happen in the family. And I look at what Keyonte can bring to this team as far as just that young energy. And I love what he said, that I'm a guy that can score from, all three levels.
I like his demeanor.
Yeah.
I like his demeanor. I like what he's saying right now and his confidence, because at his position especially, I think that he can bring something right away. I know that's why the Jazz drafted him, because you have to have a player who can come in and not be rattled, right? Who can come in and have the confidence to know that, look, I know that I can play in this league, I can get mine. I know I got to take care of my teammates, and I think he's in a perfect position, perfect timing with the right team right now with this Jazz team.
Yeah, and I think that his, like you say, his confidence is really going to pay dividends. You love when a guy comes in and knows he's great at something. His ability, I've said it a few times, but to create his own shot will really help him. And, hopefully Summer League will be the start of that, to be able to come out, get in a groove, and then we can kind of see what he's about. But a real sharpshooter, a great scorer, and I think a perfect addition to the team.
I think you look at what Keyonte George can bring to this team, and so much of it has to do with a guy that is able to create space and facilitate. That part's important. There's no question. But I think when you look at his ability to hit that long ball, it changes everything on the floor, and to be able to hit that and finish at the rim. There's a lot of players out there that are one-dimensional or two-dimensional. This guy's three-dimensional and has the ability to guard on defense.
Well, it's important, too, for guys who have been here already. They have to take it to another level, right? They have to, Lauri Markkanen has to be better than he was last year, and he can't do that by himself. So he has to have guys to help facilitate his growth as well, and I think a guy like Keyonte George can do that.
Well, we jumped in the time machine a few times here, and talked about some of the legendary players for the Utah Jazz, and they weren't all high draft picks. The two guys that we talked about, speaking of John Stockton and Karl Malone, were not the highest by any means. And the highest ever for the Utah Jazz was Daryl Griffith, when he was selected number 2 back in 1980. So we're going to jump in the time machine and put it in reverse and head back to 1980 and revisit the 1980 draft.
Dr. Duncanstein.
Yes. The Utah Jazz is very proud to select Daryl Griffith, 6'4". Fans, we're real happy with this selection. I kind of had a letdown a few weeks ago when I let the old redhead back in Boston beat me on that flip. However, I'm not so sure that once Boston couldn't get Sampson, and I have to admit to you now, we made, I thought, a hell of an offer to get him also. So either, it's just one of those things. But our feeling was that we were just very anxious to get a quality basketball player here. And I'm not so sure that if we hadn't had the first pick, we still wouldn't have picked this young man, Darryl Griffin.
What kind of a dimension can he add to your team?
Well, he's just a great player, Paul. I mean, he can, I'd say his first 2 years in college, he was a forward trying to play guard, and he really learned how to play guard this last year. I mean, he's, just a great athlete, but he really became a very disciplined player, got to hit the outside shot, which he didn't do early in his career, and he's going to be a very exciting player, and I'm very, just very excited that he'll be playing for the Jazz.
You got to start somewhere, you got to start climbing the ladder somewhere, and I think that Utah is a team that is trying to rebuild, and to be part of that rebuilding period is a challenge.
Fan support and the work of the team as one unit, and it's not going to be easy, but I think we can achieve to step up the ladder to be the best.
The question now is, can you sign him and make him happy with the money?
Oh, I'm sure we'll be able to sign him, and he's the type of player and type of person that I think he'll be real happy as long as he's playing and the team's progressing, and we will with him.
As you mentioned, Dr. Duncanstein, right? This is a guy that is just legendary, holding those basketballs.
I had the poster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little thing up.
I love time travel.
For the Utah Jazz, that's the highest pick, number 2 of all time. And it was a good one. And sometimes you miss at number 2. The Jazz didn't miss there.
No, they didn't miss. I got to play with Griff for a few years as well, coming off a national championship. And he was really the first guy who came up to me when I got here, because he knew that we had just won the national championship. And he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Big fella, let me tell you something. I know you're used to winning, but we've been struggling for a little while here. We've been trying to turn it around, so don't get disappointed if, you're coming from a championship team to a team that's struggling winning." My rookie year was the first year the Utah Jazz made the playoffs, and then just made it consecutive years after that. But Griff was really fundamental in helping me grow into a pro.
I'll tell you, that's an important conversation to have with a lot of players as they're coming into a league with a franchise that's struggling. Not necessarily here in the Utah Jazz currently, but probably at that moment for kids that are coming out of college with all kinds of accolades, and then get to a franchise wherever it might be that is struggling to win games and not know how to handle that. And again, we talked about managing both expectations and situations. That can make all the difference in the world, whether or not that situation really just tanks you, or it allows you to be able to get the maximum growth from that situation.
My memory of Griff will always be obviously the poster, but is there a prettier jumper in the history of the game? I mean, you talk about the rotation. It brought rain. I know Hot Rod used to talk about that all the time. It was not a frozen rope. It was not a frozen rope. It brought rain, and he was just an icon. I remember when he was in college, and then to hear he was coming here, it was just really, really exciting. So neat trip down memory lane.
We are a couple of picks away from the Utah Jazz 3rd pick in the 2023 NBA draft. Already at number 9, they took Taylor Hendricks, and so we'll take a look again at that pick for the Utah Jazz. Keyonte George, of course, at number 16, but starting off with Taylor Hendricks, and a guy that at number 9 is expected to come in and make an impact and has the tools to do it.
Well, no question. I'm really excited to see, one, when these young players come in, how well they'll take. They already know the game, but how well they'll take to the pro game, right? Whether it's summer league, whether it's continuing to work out with whoever their assigned coaches will be and developing their talent. But I know that the expectation for them is to be an impact. Now, it doesn't have to be a huge impact because you've got some really good pieces, but I think they're going to get an opportunity to really show this year what they can do and go beyond that.
And we've looked at the depth of the roster. You know, I mean, it's not like they're going to come in and they're going to have to earn time.
Yeah.
And Coach Hardy's big about that. He doesn't just gift minutes, but he's also, I think he's actually pretty liberal in using guys, different guys to close games and put guys in spots where maybe it'll challenge them. So the cool part is they've got a lot of great veterans, a really cohesive group, but they will have the ability to grow and develop. It won't have to be thrown at them all at once.
Yeah. How important does G League opportunities and those kinds of things, how important are they for a rookie that is coming in?
Well, in this day and age, I think it's vital.
Yeah.
It really is. And you know, I can imagine if we had had that back in the day. But these young players are really fortunate now because they don't have to sit and wait. They can go and play in the G League and get minutes. They can go get developed there by good coaches. Coach Wojciechowski, who was coached at my son at Marquette,
cool, man.
right now is a coach of the Stars, and he is a defensive-minded guy. So those guys will definitely get a nice introduction to a guy who's going to teach them early how to play basketball. But it's invaluable the time that they can get in the G League.
And I think too, part of it comes to develop, you know, that development piece, but also the attitude a young guy has. Because for some of these guys, hey, I'm a first-round pick. Why are you sending me to the G League?
That's right.
You know, and Ochai was a perfect example. Like, you know, he talked about that being a pivotal thing, and him getting more reps, a little bit more rhythm, and then kind of working on things that weren't working up at this level. So attitude is a huge part of it, and I think in these two guys, you know, from the sounds of it, they got two guys that were really, you know, invite that role if it's what's needed.
I think about how valuable and important the G League is, because as you talked about back in your day, when that wasn't something that you could do, and if you were not playing, and regardless of where you were picked, you're sitting.
You get it in practice.
Yeah, the practice is it. And we all know that you really cannot duplicate what happens in a game in a practice. And you're really not meant to. And then you get to the NBA where you rarely practice anyway. You know, once you get on these road trips and you're traveling and you're in and out, you know, the opportunity to have 3 days off where you practice one of those days is very rare.
Yeah, and you're learning on the fly. And one of the things Coach Hardy is big on is the language of basketball, right? It's not just about these players understanding positions. It's about learning his language and learning what they need to do and how he introduces it to them. I mean, you know, back in the day, you know, coach just writes some things on a piece of paper, or, you know, but now the language is something that these players have to really understand, because there's so much involved now in strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. The name of, you know, how you characterize a ball screen. You know, if you're going to force that thing down, some teams call it ice, some teams call it black. You know, some teams call a switch red, but that language, that culture, that vocabulary of your organization is vital, because when you say something as a coach, I mean, the point is nobody needs to be on a different page.
That's
you know,
right.
You say something and everybody understands. That's the sign of great coaching.
Jazz are on the clock with the 28th pick. We will get to that in just a moment, but going back to this whole idea of culture, vocabulary is a big part of that, and you know, the culture lends itself to it if it allows guys within that locker room to be able to help one another out. You mentioned the guys that took you under their wing, and then when John Stockton was drafted, you're going and picking him up. You know, there's a cultural piece to that is very valuable, and when you have cultures that are fractured, it's when guys are not doing those types of things for each other, and it really is born out of insecurity. They're so worried that you're going to take my job, that I'm going to make sure you can't succeed. You know, and so they don't allow you to succeed, but they try to do something to disrupt that.
It's the difference between scarcity mindset and abundance, right?
Yes.
And I think that what the Jazz have going here, you know, Ryan talked about it there, is You know, they want this to be an abundant situation where everybody's pulling for everybody. That's the way that ultimately we're going to have a parade. Downstate, you think State Street? Is that where we're going to go?
I like that kind of talk.
I want to see you on a float, man.
Right.
Big
I'm
T.
good, man. I can do it. I can do it.
I'm looking at the graphic that's indicating that Utah Jazz, their pick is in. So we are moments away from the final first-round pick of the Jazz. Our plan was to go for about 2 hours tonight, and we weren't sure how far that would take us. We just hit 3 hours, and we are still going live on YouTube. We appreciate everybody keeping locked on, and the people that have been part of the chat and participating in this. And I think it's been a lot of fun. This is something we haven't done in the past, and I'm not sure how many franchises, to be honest with you, would do this or could do this, depending on, you know, whether they have the resources to do it, or secondly, whether they have the fan base to do it.
We're trailblazers, baby. We're on the forefront of stuff.
Yeah, right, absolutely. We don't mess around over here. We're disruptors.
Yeah. Take after the owner/governor of the Utah Jazz, Ryan Smith, who has taken the old model of broadcast and changed it completely. And so the Utah Jazz got one more pick here tonight at number 28. And let's see, you know, they're just reviewing the Utah Jazz picks at this point. Of course, Taylor Hendricks, Keyonte George. And I think about being picked at that spot, right, number 28. It's still in the first round, but you got a lot of guys that are sitting in the green room right now that have been watching other guys get picked. And these are typically the guys that have a big chip on their shoulder when they come into the league. And they don't forget who passed up on them.
Yeah. No, they don't. And Coach, remind me, how many rounds did we have back in my day? That thing went all day.
7?
Oh, it did. Yeah, it's like, wow.
That was heaven, though. I loved it. Truck Robinson.
But, you know, there's still going to be some great stories.
There we go. The commissioner's coming to the podium, so the announcement for the Utah Jazz is coming here.
In the 2023 NBA Draft, the Utah Jazz select Bryce Sensibaugh.
He was in the mix. A 2 for 3, man.
All right, Bryce Sensibaugh, another forward. They went with the 9th pick, and it was a forward. Bryce Sensibaugh, forward out of Ohio State. Here's a look at his measurables at 6'6", 235 pounds, and just 19 years old, and 13 All Big Ten. And he's actually more of a, you know, kind of a tweener, guard forward. They have him listed as a forward, but the Jazz, I think, as they looked at him, he's got plenty of options.
So 16 points a game on catch and shoot threes last year, gentlemen. He was 44% on catch and shoot threes. He's a mismatch nightmare. Think like THT, guy that can get it, ISO himself into that mid post and play. Got a lot of crafty skills, and that's, you know, it's a great pick. He was predicted to go a lot higher through the mocks. Just 19 years old, but again, his key ability is his ability to knock down a three-point shot, catch and shoot, which there's going to be a lot of space on the floor, so hopefully he can do some of that.
Well, you can always use makers.
Yeah.
Right? And he's one of those guys that can fill it up at 19 years old. So obviously some developmental work with all these guys, really. But you know, obviously he's got athleticism, 6'6". I mean, Michael Jordan was 6'6", right? That's always my fallback, Michael Jordan.
From North Carolina.
Well, I think about what the Utah Jazz were able to accomplish in a draft like this. And we didn't get a live look at the war room on this last selection. But to your point, Tim, you look at the projections and the mock drafts that are out there, and it was anticipated that he would go a little bit higher than this. And for the Jazz, that's a situation where a guy falls into your lap, or he's available when you're selecting when you maybe didn't think so, and you're like, oh, you know, absolutely, we're glad he's still available, and here's our guy.
One of our great local writers, Sarah Todd, actually tweeted something out today that caught my eye, that there are a couple of guys who are probably going to slide beyond their spot based on, you know, some uncertain medical stuff.
The Jazz have always been really good at doing their due diligence, but I do know Bryce had 2 knee injuries, in his playing career. But at 28, the Jazz feel like that's again, take a little bit of a risk perhaps, but a 44% shooter, and if you can get a guy who probably would have been picked maybe in the top 15 at 28, you take that all day long.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's the making of a great story.
Yeah.
Question is now, what is he going to do with that? How is he going to use that, incentivize him to come in and be the best that he can be?
Yeah, I mean, we all will point, because it's fresh in our minds, to Jamal Murray having a horrific knee injury and being able to bounce back from that and take a team along with the Joker, obviously, and the other players on that team. Get yourself, you got to warm it up. Warm up this J-Dog. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in. Tim LaComb, Coach, thank you very much. Big T, Thurl Bailey, my partner. Appreciate you for being part of this broadcast. JP Chunga, who has been handling all of our big interviews from ZBBC, Zions Bank Basketball Campus, and to all the fans that came out, the best fans in the entire NBA here at the Delta Center. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on K-Jazz for the Utah Jazz in 2023.